And welcome back, everyone, to the Smite Challenger Circuit. This time, we're going to be in North America. My name is Gormizer. Over there is Agro's joining us back after a nice little week off. To jump right back into things, we're going to have the Sturdy Artisans taking on the Tiburones de Tijuana. So much simpler. I don't know what it is. My mouth is catching up to my mind. Either way, a very fun matchup that we're going to have today for you. Of course, the Sturdy Artisans have been doing pretty well. The Tiburones have been trying their best as of late, but having a little bit of struggles here so far in Phase 2 that things haven't been able to quite click the way that they did in Phase 1.
No, Phase 1, this team looked really good, and now they've gone through a bunch of roster changes. Seems like their identity has changed a little bit, and whenever that happens, it usually takes a little bit to catch back up to speed. So no real surprise, but we know this team has a lot of potential, so I'm looking forward to them turning it around.
Well, we can go ahead and take a peek-see at the schedule. Of course, you just saw Elysium take down Pandemonium in a 2-0. Now we're jumping over to North America, the Tiburones taking on the Sturdy Artisans. Sleekness as well going to be taking on Winter Dogs. That's the matchup right after this. Tomorrow, you're going to be able to go back to Europe, watch Just F6 and Snake Hunters. Sunday, Europe will come back for Goodnight Nick and Team Joystick. And of course, on Saturday, there, the Herculean Hoofs taking on the Average Joes. All of those starting at 11 a.m. right before the SBL. But of course, you have to look at where the standings are for these teams in North America and where things kind of, I guess, ultimately fall down for them. I believe top 2, top 3 is what they're looking for here. Sturdy Artisans right on the cusp of it, just behind the Herculean Hoofs, whereas the Tiburones struggling not too far behind, honestly. One win and they're tied.
Yeah, they're in a pretty good position, certainly within striking distance. The Sturdy Artisans, this is a team that historically has done very, very well in this SCC region, so a little surprised to see them where they are, but this is a team that we know has that potential. Sino and his creativity in the jungle for this squad. I'm excited to see what he's cooked up with the new patch, because I've got a bet that it isn't what everyone else is playing.
Oh, and that's the thing that was very interesting for this team, right? Was Sino, for a brief stint, had to leave. I think they had Stewart as well a long time ago. Stewart gets pulled to the SBL, then Sino jumps up for a weekend there, and of course, because of the gaps necessary, had to take an interesting break. You had to figure out what you were going to do with all those roster changes, and we saw a few of them not quite as successful as I'm sure the Sturdy Artisans would have liked, but of course, now that all of those players are back, we are pretty much, well, maybe not right back to square one. You get Sino back in the jungle, you don't get Stewart, but you get Griff, who I think is just an equal trade for you here, and the Sturdy Artisans have been looking good ever since.
Griff, definitely one of the premier ADCs in this region, so that's why it surprises me that, Stu obviously a great player, the namesake of this squad, if you will, but to have them struggle as much as they have this phase once Sino has returned does surprise me a little bit. But I think that they're going to catch up to speed pretty quickly here. Yeah. I think this is a team, you think about their matchup up against the Hoofs. I remember this set. This should have been a set win probably for the Sturdy Artisans, but some good plays from the Hoofs and some mistakes from the Artisans turned that one around. I don't think, if you're a big fan of the Sturdy Artisans, I don't think you need to be super concerned about this team. I think they're still in a position to make a play and get towards that top 2.
Last week we saw Sino play Vamana jungle.
Yeah.
I'm just letting people know that did happen. I think he played Vamana into Kali, and it was an interesting weekend. Of course, that's the kind of thing you were alluding to earlier, exactly what you could expect specifically out of Sino, which is nothing that you would typically expect out of the jungle. So we'll keep our eyes over there. But instead, we need to look at the Tiburones, the Sharks, on the other side, because they have been relatively successful as of late. Again, not exactly the phase that they would have idealized for themselves, especially after having such successful Phase 1, but it hasn't slowed them down too much here at the end.
No, they still have a lot of the core. It's really the duo lane that has changed the most for this team. Ranjaro and Sybil now in the duo lane, but you still have Spreen, Cope, and Heed. That 3-man core for this team, I expect is enough to do very good things for this squad. And I think that Ranjaro has a lot of promise in this lane. Ironic that he's sniping promise as I say that, but I think that Ranjaro is a really good player, and I think that Sybil's had opportunities to play at this level before. So I'm expecting this Tiburones team to be very competitive, not just today, but for the rest of this phase of the SCC.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Unfortunately for them, is maybe the worst time to start getting competitive overall, since it's week 9. They have one more week of play. Good news is that they're playing a team that if they beat them, they can tie them in the standings, and then we start to get into the murkiness of head-to-head, plus-minus, all those things that I'll admit I don't have off the top of my head. So instead, we'll see if they're able to do it first to begin with by going into picks and bans here for game number 1. Sturdy Artisans are going to be your first pick team, and this is where things have been a little more interesting as of late. I can tell you most of the bans that we've gotten used to seeing, your Yamojis, your Tiamats, Artio has jumped up there as well, but there's always something special, actually, about both of these squads that makes it a little more difficult to just ban the meta. You have to go kind of out of your way. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something even like the ESET.
Well, especially because both of these teams are playing on 8.9 now, so you've got a whole new patch to worry about. So things are going to change pretty significantly, and the Artisans immediately taking 2 Assassins off the board, where previously we might not see those. I mean, Cope has been playing a lot of Thanatos, a lot of Rat, but it's like, it's not that strong. Jungle's not in the strongest spot. We don't have to worry about it. Now, Jungle gets a bunch of buffs. Maces get a bunch of buffs. Rat and Thanatos start looking much scarier, so it doesn't surprise me too much to see them taken out.
Not only has Cope been really good at Thanatos, all of the items that you want on a Thanatos just got overwhelmingly buffed for you. Either they're cheaper now, they've got more power. I don't like the idea of that. I'm really happy I haven't had to play against the Thanatos lately.
Exactly.
I didn't think about that Heartseeker buff, I think, more than anything. As well as like Hydra's, he's just got a good build going for him. They take out the Terra alongside the Ratatosker and that Thanatos. The other side is a little more usual, I guess, especially with the way we've seen the solo lane. If you watched the SPL last week, it makes a little more sense for Wukong to be banned up there. Yamoja gets taken out, so does this Camazotz, but that leaves open so many of these top picks. Raijin is actually the mid laner I've personally been leaning towards, but you can't really deny, after seeing that beautiful performance from that Tiamat earlier today, that's going to be a really good one to pick up. And of course, this pick that kind of flooded the SPL, the Geb.
First, right off the bat for the Sturdy Artisans. But when you think about Ionic and his career and how long he played in the SPL and what some of his signature picks were, this Geb, and it better be recolor Geb, because that's Ionic's skin. I think that is going to be a really good pick here for the Artisans. I think that this pick is strong, but you leave open a lot of really good stuff on the other side. Odin Artio is a really, really fearsome 2 to pick up, but it does mean that one of them has to go in a role that isn't quite as strong for him. I think both of these gods' best role is in the solo lane. Obviously, you can only have one of those.
That's the thing. I think we've seen Neil Ma as the only support, realistically. Maybe Aurora has a couple of times that we've seen the Artio get picked up in the SBL, but most of the time, like you said, solo lane. Odin can fit over there in the duo lane, but he tends to want to be aggressive. You want to talk about 8.9 and 8.9 encapsulated into a top 3. It is the Sturdy Artisans pickups right here. An Uller and a Nike to go alongside that Geb. If you watched last week, you know that Uller is just too much to handle. I mean, in the right hands, and specifically I'm having flashbacks to Zapman, he just insta-killed almost anybody that stood in his way.
Yeah, exactly. Uller went from this god that only had early pressure and then fell off late to has good early pressure and then one taps you late with the itemization. So you lose a weakness there.
I've just got so many. I've got a lot of fun facts. I did the SPL waiting room meeting this morning.
Yeah.
And so I wrote Fact Seat Gaming right afterward, and so I've got all these fun facts on the tip of my tongue. But you're on the show,
give me
and so I
give me a little bit
say
here.
anything.
Come on, maybe one.
Who else was on it? Is
J-Mac,
you and J-Mac? Yeah. So J-Mac's probably listening too.
Right,
so
so
I don't want to just give it away.
Well,
just watch tomorrow at 12:30 ish.
Yeah, but maybe you
Do we always start at 12:30? I should know this.
Whenever the timer goes off.
If we have a good show, 12:30. If we have an alright show, 12:35.
No. That's what we don't admit to the audience. We say it's dependent on the length of SCC.
Yeah.
That's what matters. Length of SCC.
Totally not. Hey, what happened last week? Did anything flashy happen? And can we talk about it? Put me and Aggro on it. We'll talk about anything forever. Hey, there's the Morgan that gets locked in. Hell, Raijin get banned away by the Tiburones. On the other side, it is Awelish and Susana. So 4 jungle bans. Depending on how you want to shake it, 5, because we've seen Terra jungle technically this year. So something else I could get through that way. Cupid gets locked in here. And this is an interesting one. I can't remember who played it. I want to say Barra maybe last week or maybe just in the last few weeks. For some reason, I have a matchup in my head of Cupid versus Uller. It seems to be a pick to go to maybe try and shut him down.
It's a typical counter matchup because Uller doesn't have any sort of CC immunity. You know that you can catch him with that Fields of Love very easily, force the beads, try and get some lane dominance back. Wouldn't be too surprised to see that be the idea, is trying to maximize some of that cooldown in that lane, a Transcendent, something along those lines, and allow him to try and put some pressure on the purification beads. And I don't know what I was thinking about Gore, that I was thinking, you know, man, I really don't know what Sino is going to play. All the maces got buffed, and Chalk got buffed, and Sino's playing. So you know it's going to be Chungle. It is just that simple.
And you know, it's weird. It feels weird to say it, at least, that it's not the first Chalk that we've seen since 8.9. It got locked in last week as well. The Bastet as well, something that we got to see from Scream, although not to the success that you would typically want. A good pickup, though. I mean, she admittedly, everything that you think Bastet's going to give you is very upfront. Here's some damage with the sided damage. Everything should be very easily read, but not an easy comp to jump into. Specifically when I look at that Uller, I think that ganking the dual lane just feels like it is going to be hell on earth. Maybe focused more towards the mid, trying to lock down this Giannis.
Exactly. I like the picks that they have up against this Giannis. Pagon could potentially struggle up against the dot damage, something that does very well up against Giannis, and the cripples that the Tiburones have. Two things that Giannis typically doesn't deal particularly well with are there pretty easily for the Tiburones, so I'm looking at how well Pagon's going to be able to navigate this game as an indicator for his success.
We'll jump on down into game number 1. Of course, we're still going to be joining you for this one, but Doug is going to help us bring the views throughout all this. Sino will be rocking the Chalk jungle, and again, maybe not something too outlandish. You asked for it. You did get the recolor for the Geb. And so
iconic. Look, there are some skin combos that you don't mess with, okay? It's recolor Thor for Ammonster.
Yep.
It's recolor Geb for Ionic. Those are just some of the ones that you're not going to mess with.
Didn't Gars, like, he always played
Heavy Metal.
Was it Heavy Metal? I was going to say, it was Heavy Metal or Blood Eagle. Somebody always played Blood Eagle. That might have been Lass's,
Pretty sure he always played Heavy Metal. Homie Faye always played the Iron Gamer.
Yeah, the Iron Gaming.
There were some.
It's the only time I ever saw that skin really used, honestly. Is
that skin was pretty good.
Played it.
I think that's an underrated Thor skin for sure. Thor just has good skins, man. I don't know.
Especially after you got that tier. Geez, that's long ago. Season 2?
Season 2.
That he got that tier 5?
Yep.
Still feels like
we've been around a long time.
Yeah, I just aged about 3 years.
I know.
Having that
Season
that
8, by the way.
I was actually thinking about it earlier about the fact that like we're a stone's throw away from a decade of SBL.
Yep.
And technically, Season 9 will have a full decade because there was the preseason, I guess Season 0 is the way to call it, for the SBL where there's some competitive. But going to Season 9 and then Season 10 is just around the horizon.
Right around
But we still got to finish Season 8, and so that's where I'm going to keep my focus on right now. This dual lane is going to be painful on one side, and I think not wildly successful early on the other, even though you have this Odin. Just feels like the matchup into Geb, harms him in a way.
Well, Geb very good at cleansing those stuns, of course, but also doesn't really handle Odin jumping in particularly well. But Uller has enough wave clear to kind of bypass the wave clear from the Odin. The Geb is very low clear, the Odin is very high clear among their classes. But the Cupid is very low clear, and the Uller is pretty high clear. So you've got kind of a split difference in the dual lane, but I think you should pretty much always favor which hunter is going to end up having a little bit more clear for you here.
And a couple of things, we didn't get to hear from you last week specifically about this Bumba's start for the hunters, Griff locking that in. We saw it a ton in the hunters during the SBL. But what actually catches my eye, I think first and foremost, is the one that stands out even more, the Benevolence that's locked in for Sybil. A lot of people have been talking about this. Did not see it a whole lot last week. I think we even saw some War Flag over this. How are you feeling about the new Benevolence?
Yeah, I think it's close to being one of the best starter items for supports, but I don't think it's there quite yet. You really have to emphasize roaming on a pickup like this because you get those stacks by being alone, and you'll see Sybil kind of dip into the jungle every once in a while, get some stacks up, come back, heal up Renjaru. It feels pretty good to use whenever you are roaming a lot and then coming to a lane where someone is already hurt. The fact that you can't expend the stacks if the laner is full HP makes it a little bit awkward, especially in the later stages where you're trying harder to not get poked because that poke is more relevant. But on a pick like Odin that is going to try and be a little bit more active across the map than someone like Geb, who's a little bit more sedentary, that's a rock pun, I like it a decent amount. I think it's pretty solid.
You don't get a whole ton of rock puns, just in general, overall. And I will say, I will gladly admit that I spent most of my, you know how colleges, I'm just all anecdotes today. You know how colleges always require you to take extraneous, sciences.
Right.
When I got to fluid dynamics and physics, I said no, and then jumped over to geology and finished out doing geology for the rest of my degree that we got there. But of course, Geb's been doing pretty well. The Bumbas starts that have been going on, we've seen a little bit more of it. It really it hasn't hit benevolence in phase 2 of SPL status where 9 out of 10 people are getting it. But we're starting to get used to seeing, 4, maybe even 5 picked up in a game.
Yeah, I do think that for Hunters, I'm surprised to see them build it early, especially if they're going Transcendence. Uller seems to be going Jotuns first or Crusher first. They're opting for a Mace first. So in those instances, it makes sense because you just have so much gold off the start that you don't want to sit on Mace 1 plus pots and then back earlier for Heavy Mace. I mean, you can maybe math out some pretty quick equations to figure out where your power spike is a little bit stronger that way. I think if you're going Transcendence, particularly first, I'm surprised that we don't see Trans 2 as the start because it is similar in power, but you get to dump that gold not into a Bumba's dagger, but into Transcendence itself, and so it speeds up your Trans quite a bit. I think in those instances, I don't really love buying the Bumbas. I think that going Spear late is really good, so I'm all about that. But I don't know that they need it to start with if they're going Transcendence, but in this situation where Griff is going a Mace first item, you might as well buy it. This is where it helps you the most, is in your jungle clear. I don't think it makes a difference wave 1, which is why I think the Trans 2 start is better if you're going Transcendence, but if you are going, if it does help you in your jungle clear even a little bit, it's going to feel good.
He finishes off the Jotun's Wrath. Now we have some aggression on the blue buff. Heed is taking a little bit of pressure. Cope is in the neighborhood, though, and even though they're going to get the lockdown, get Heed to about half health, drop the Sentinel of Zeus as well to get the slow. They're looking for the damage. The ult from Chalk's going to be there. They need one more hit. The tower is starting to find some peel through space and time, comes ripping behind them. But ultimately, Heed stays alive. Pagon not able to do anything with that rotation.
That healing and the protections from the Vampiric Shroud and Breastplate too, just barely enough. But good damage coming from Relentless One and Sino already, and you can tell because they've both picked up Jotun's Wrath. So we've got 3 Jotuns done for the Sturdy Artisans already. Not your typical bruiser solo lane item to kick us off here. It's all damage, and I think that he was really feeling that. I don't think he expected to take as much as he did. And it's worth noting that Cope, who also has the Jotuns, did drop the ultimate, tossed out a 2, tossed out a 3, barely did any damage.
Well, now we'll see if he can make up for that lack of damage. Sino one hit away. Heed is able to secure the kill right there. Relentless One not able to walk away from the Bastet. And so lacking a little bit earlier with the ult, doesn't lack it here, and now he's chasing down Pagon Spreen with a transformation of the Bastet. Makes sure to lock it down.
How about that for a turnaround, though, for the Tiburones? I mean, they lose the blue, but they get 3 kills, 1 in mid, 2 on the right side jungle in the span of 10 seconds. And that's the problem whenever you go these Jotun's Wraths to start, is that the RDO is going to chunk you pretty hard. Relentless One took a massive chunk just from that bear swipe. No chance that he can skirmish without the ultimate with the build that he's gone. And then Pagon, we see the Bastet pick up, not just working for Cope, but for Spreen as well. That dot damage, making sure that portal wasn't going to be enough, and then the pounce damage on top of that, certainly helping out Spreen's cause.
I mean, just making sure that you can see the Bastet, especially because Spreen got a little more of an effective ult as the Bastet than what we got to see out of Cope. But that damage is something that you cannot scoff at and is very easily chased down, at least in Ionis. Even with the portal through the wall, didn't get away, and I'm trying to get away. Relentless one more time. Still doesn't have a lot of protections, but is Nike, so we'll have enough of a knockback to make sure that Cope isn't able to stay aggressive. Blue buffs go exactly where you would expect them as of this time. And so they pull back, and I say that immediately. Sino's getting aggressive onto Rinjaru. Takes a lot of Rinjaru's health as well, and is able to help scoop up purple buff for his team.
Actually, a smart play there from Rinjaru to not use the dash in reaction to the Chalk ult sound. You just got to hope that you're not getting one tapped off that ultimate, and you won't be yet, though. He took a good 65% off the ult plus the 1. You just can't afford to get your dash caught. That's the nightmare scenario in that situation for Rinjaru. So holds the dash, loses the purple from a good little flank in from Sino, but at least holds on to his life in that moment.
We've got to keep our eyes, at least for me, more on Sino here. Beads are available for Cope and Spreen. We haven't seen a whole lot of them outside of a couple of engages, one being a little more detrimental to the team where they fall down alongside Relentless One. But he's been aggressive, and he's been present on the map pretty much everywhere that is necessary. It's just been a little bit slow rolling, but like you said, this isn't that point in the game where he's going to start popping off. But admittedly, I don't know when the point in the game where Chalk Jungle is supposed to take control. Of course, it seems like right now, maybe the mid-game is where he's going to find his control, gets aggressive, Fields of Love, as well as the tower shots. Sino goes way too deep and ends up getting punished for it.
Okay, yeah, so it's not then. We can rule that part out as when Chalk Jungle really starts to pop off. Look, I'm a jungle believer, okay? I think Chalk's best role is jungle, and I mean that unironically. He does really good damage with this type of build, but you need at least 2 items, probably 3. And his best moments are when he can force you to auto-trade him, because with that rain slowing you down, it keeps you in range for his big 3rd auto. You get attack speed slowed. That's where I think he's really strong. It's not against the Ichaival Hunter underneath his tier 2 tower. That's really not going to be the play for him at any point.
You know, it looked really good until the tower joined the equation.
Yeah, I agree.
Fields of Love getting pulled out. It at least makes you feel a little bit better of it. You can see that Heavenly picked up for Ionic. Just kind of the classic counter over there. We also haven't seen much of the Geb. I mean, admittedly, Geb's not the early game playmaker that you tend to expect. With the buff to Cataclysm, would have expected a little bit more. No Blink maybe is slowing that one down a little bit. Pagon in a little bit of trouble here in mid. Odin Cage not going to be good enough through space and time. Not quite enough to get away from, once again, the Bastet transformation for Spreen, who finds a 2nd kill onto the mid laner.
I guess his regular portal was down because there was a wall inside that cage that Pagon could have escaped to the right, but just tries to get greedy, holds onto the ultimate for too long. Maybe it's because of the build going Charon's first. He doesn't have a lot of CDR, just that 10% from Sands of Time makes him a little bit more wary of how often he's using his ultimate potentially. But I really don't like that decision making from Pagon. And then again, once you go through the wall, you have to angle it in a way that Spreen's jump won't catch you. That's the most important part. He could have gone a little bit more north towards top right side of mids, because of course that portal is going to extend further than a jump could from that angle, and maybe, I mean, you have to make a pretty harrowing escape path through the enemy side of the jungle, but he certainly wasn't living with the direction that he ended up going.
Yeah, it's die one way, probably die the other, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and that small, slim chance is maybe the one you should have gone for. Unfortunately for him, again, wasn't the choice. Now has no ult. Still has his beads, though, so he's going to be able to hold on to that. Still waiting for the level 12 mark. Just hit for Spreen. Spreen's already got the Aegis, but everyone else slowly but surely catching up and picking up those 2nd relics pretty soon. And the fact that this has been a very clean start for the Tiburones. I mean, 11 minutes in, up about 2,000 gold, 5 kills to none. And there has not been a whole lot of clapback from the Sturdy Artisans just yet. And a lot of it has just been slow roll. I mean, nobody really seems to have much answer for what the Tiburones are throwing at them.
I like the way they're playing because I think their composition is really good at this chaotic, hectic, scrambling fight style. They've got so much mobility between the Bastet and the Odin and this Cupid dash. You've got really good lockdown with the Odin, but outside of that, not a whole lot. I think once they start to 5-on-5, I could see the Tiburones starting to struggle with everyone in front of Ionic. If he can just find these key shields, it might be difficult for the Tiburones to punch through that. It'll be harder for Spreen to find angles in. It'll be harder for Cope to find angles in. Whereas Sino can be a little bit more disrespectful on his pick of the Chalk because even though he's gone full damage, he's got that warrior protection skill. So I think that the Tiburones are really playing to the strengths of their comp really well. They're keeping the Sturdy Artisans split up.
And sometimes it's all you need. Not only keeping them split up, but they've got that ult on cooldown as of right now. Pagon has not been permitted to just exist in the mid lane for a little while, and they're making a big rotation, starting up the Gold Fury now. Sino, Ionic are in the neighborhood. We can see Relentless One as well making a rotation. Griff getting pulled into the conversation, but that Gold Fury is already precariously low. Sino's going to go in with the ult, but there's an Odin Cage to answer back. They're jumping in, they're getting the damage, and that Chalk Jungle is just down. Ionic barely able to stay alive. The shield doing everything it can. Heed is trying to get some damage out of there. The portal from Pagon's going to pull him away and keep them alive for now, but only a little bit. He gets some return damage through the wall and manages to pick up Heed, maybe hugging too close to where the Giannis could find the shot. They're going to pull back, still pick up the Gold Fury, but Griff has eyes.
Griff misses the axe, though. That's going to make it difficult, but he's got good steal potential, and the Tiburones know it. They're going to give it up to one lone Uller.
Wow.
in the area, and that's just a threat that Ullr's going to put on you from that type of position. Sino just goes in a little bit too early there, and by a little bit, I mean a lot of bit too early. And it's unfortunate that I think he blinked into a cat that then rooted him instantly from Cope, and so he didn't get nearly as deep into the enemy backline as he wanted. It seems counterintuitive to want to go deeper if you're going too early in the team fight, but it actually ends up being better for you because you can back the DPS off of you by dealing damage to them. Because Spreen and Renjaru didn't have to worry about getting hit by that Chalk ult, they don't have to worry about stopping hitting Sino. You know, they can just keep the damage flowing.
Damage flowed increasingly into him. I mean, almost insanely fast how quickly Sino went down there. Not enough for the Tiburones, though, and they only pick up the 1 kill on Sino. They lose Heat, so ultimately it ends up being an even trade, which at this point, especially now where the gold lead is starting to sit, kind of dipping back under that 2K mark, means that it favors, in my mind, Sturdy Artisans. We'll see how long they're going to be able to keep hold of that, because the farm has been going pretty well for Tiburones. And if they've already pulled 1 Gold Fury, I don't hold it past them to start looking to pull another, but I think they're going to time it more around these ults, which admittedly all of them are right back up.
Interesting, there isn't a lot of anti-heal quite yet for the Sturdy Artisans. I mean, this RDO,
yeah,
I think has become a character that you need to itemize for. And maybe Pagon's going Divine, but that's not going to feel particularly good for him, and that would mean that he's still only sitting on 20% CDR. I kind of think that he almost needs a Desolation in that spot, but the Sturdy Artisans also need anti-heal. No Brawlers from Sino yet, though I don't think he'll get one. If I'm looking at the rest of this build, I'd expect that to be Erendite, then Heartseeker after that, and then, you know, something like a Titan's Bane or a Serrated Edge, trying to get some more percent pen. I don't think he's really got room anymore for that Brawler's Beat Stick, so that makes it a little bit difficult to find the appropriate anti-heal. You do have a Pestilence there from Relentless One, and maybe you could just rely on only that, but I'm a little worried that Heed's healing is going to go a little bit too rampant.
Maybe, well, I was going to say maybe we're going to get a Curse Knock. No, we get a Phantom Veil that gets looped up. Makes sense. There's an Odin on the other side that tends to warrant itself at least one relic on the other side. With Blink being picked up for the jungle in the solo lane, that falls onto Ionic. Again, very quiet game from the Geb so far. We've seen a couple of good shields. He saves his own life during that last engagement, but nothing too insane. Sino gets caught out by Heed, or Heed is caught out here. Both are going to be able to disengage from each other, but the poke flying between these two. Despite that early Gold Fury pull, neither team has looked back at the left objective at all.
Not enough secure on the side of the Tiburones. They know that those little skirmish fights are more important for them than the full 5-on-5 groupings, especially now that Phantom is done for Ionic. It's going to be harder for Sybil to find these game-winning or fight-winning cages. I think the Tiburones need to keep going.
Well, there's going to be a cage. We'll see. Phantom Veil comes out. So far, the answer is no. They just break down the wall, walk on out of there. Sybil's still getting aggressive. Relentless One jumps to get away. Sybil's at half health. The damage from Griff manages to burst him down, and that shield is working as hard as it can, but Pagon goes through the portals, and Pagon finds Sybil. Now they've split up the Tiburones and are chasing them down one by one. Renjaru gets taken out. Cope has barely any health, but Griff gets jumped on in the backline. Spreen able to transform into the Bastet, find the kill, and lock them down, but it might just cost them their lives. The CC from Cataclysm and the lockdown from Sino helps find the kill, and that is an overwhelming sweep in favor of the Sturdy Artisans.
Look, it was the Tiburones who I kept saying need to keep these fights spread out, but that time it was them who got separated too much. The Sturdy Artisans just got really good poke on Sybil. Sybil's trying to blink engage and blow that Phantom because he's got the shorter cooldowns. He's got the Relic Dagger with the shorter cooldown ultimate. You can blink in, get the Phantom, get out, but the Artisans just don't respect that cage enough, and for good reason, because there wasn't enough follow-up damage to make them respect it. They just break down the wall, pop the sprint to get out of the Cupid ult, no harm, no foul, and then Sybil takes too much damage from Griff. Pagon's able to provide some really good mobility portals. They don't hit anybody, but they turn the team fight because of how much extra movement the Sturdy Artisans get as a unit, and they're able to make it work.
Not only that, finding a very clean kill. Granted, you lose Griff in the process, which maybe stops this from taking over to be an overwhelming lead for the Sturdy Artisans, or at least a completely even game for the Sturdy Artisans. But you do get the Gold Fury and quite a few kills into your pocket. And slowing down Spreen right now, 4-1-0 and Spreen has been getting all of their kills as Bastet than they have as Morgan themselves. And that has been I mean, admittedly impressive turnaround. We also have to look at it. The Brawlers picked up, Heartseeker as well for Cope. The damage is there. We saw a lot of it in that last engagement, just not the complete follow-through to find the kills for the Tiburones. And it feels like it's not necessarily window is closing, but this team as a whole, I mean, Morgan does really well into late, Artio can, but Odin starts to slow down. We should start to see a little more out of this Cupid, but ultimately, they're not going to be hitting as hard with the same amount of control we had in the first few minutes.
I agree, and I think the big thing is that time, Sino was able to win the 1v1 up against Cope. That ultimate just chunked Cope out so much, silenced him, made him unable to use anything to try and punish.
Well, Sino caught out as of right now. The ult only connects on one, and then he's jumped on. Look at that health bar dwindle. 2 Bastets is too much to handle. A nice through space and time connects onto Rinjaru. But no follow-up from the Sturdy Artisans. Going to find the kill. Good. Unstable Vortex from Pagon. Gets some decent damage out there. But again, it feels like they want to disengage. Griff changes their mind, turns around. He's looking for an axe target. Doesn't have anybody to hit here. Tier 1 tower in mid should end up falling, well, maybe saved here by Heed. Unfortunately, Tier 1 in left is not saved by anyone. It's get pushed down by the Artisans, and now another skirmish going through, but Relentless One probably looking to just stay alive.
Yeah, he's Nike. He's got a shield. He's A-okay. I think in that moment, Sino's expecting the through space and time to come through a little bit earlier and give him the backup that he needed. But you need to be a little bit more careful up against the burst damage that the Tiburones have. Even with the Geb shield, not enough to save Sino's life.
2 Bastets is too much to handle.
Yep.
I mean, it just there's so much damage that becomes out of nowhere, it feels like, between Spreen and Cope. That is really helping out. Stealing away the blue buff successfully. Ionic watches that one fall down. Cope is level 19, 2-level lead over Sino here in the jungle. He's 2-0-2 as well. And it's a pick that, admittedly, not a lot of people run. Scream ran it last week, did not have the performance that you would want in the SBL, but outside of Scream in the SBL, no one's really picking it up. Feels like something that Tiburones, and specifically that Cope, is going to be able to make look good and maybe remind people why Bastet exists, which admittedly so far has been the overwhelming amount of damage, especially comboed with Spreen.
And here it comes, right back onto Sino. Sino's already used the ultimate. No chance he gets out of this.
Yeah, Fields of Love were thrown down. The cage has already been used, so the Phantom Veil gets answered. And they get out of there for the Sturdy Artisans, just not fast enough. Sino gone for 40 seconds. And they have a good window of opportunity here to get aggressive if you're the Tiburones.
Man, Sino is just trying to do it all. You know, he's trying to be the one-man band right now, and the Tiburones are just not letting him get away with it, and appropriately so. Just too far forward again there for Sino, and didn't get much out of it.
Well, Heed, I was thinking was going to find out the hard way about how much damage Ulir can do, but it doesn't seem to be a problem as of right now. Heed is playing distraction. 4 people chasing him. They are going to get the kill, but the Pyromancer went the other way just prior now. Ionic, good Cataclysm, finds 2, but is going to be locked down himself. Spreen takes way too much damage. Spreen trying to get out of here, turns into the Bastet, goes for the leap, and finds the damage! A big delete button, double kill, picked up. Spreen does end up losing their life. It's Pagon for 3 as of right now, and the turnaround from Sturdy Artisans is continuing the chase. Cope finds a leap away, but Relentless One continues forward. No mana to work with, but an Ionic right nearby. A good knockup keeps Sybil isolated of all things. An unfortunate timed blink locks down the support, and it's a 4-for-1.
Yeah, I think Sybil, Cope was out. Sybil kind of just throws his life away in that instance, but I suppose it doesn't matter that much. The Sturdy Artisans just able to spread out and make sure the Tiburones, all this damage they have, they're going to kill someone. You know, it's not a matter of if they can kill, it's a matter of who they're going to kill and how many they're going to be able to get. They get Pagon with some absurd burst damage. That really caught me off guard how much that pounce did, but it still costs them a lot in order to get it. And they still get Spreen, they still get Rinjaru. Rinjaru has just been totally unable to make a huge impact in these fights as the Tiburones were hoping for. And the Artisans spread them out again, enough to where they can pick apart the pieces as they start to try and run away and come together. And sometimes, you know, the fight by Gold Fury, it was Griff that was going to die. That fight, it was Pagon. That's going to continue to happen. Now the focus has to be from the Sturdy Artisans on, if someone's got to die, it has to be Pagon, because that way at least we can end up sieging these Phoenixes and sieging these towers, because now Griff's life is more important than that of his mid laner.
And Griff, well, looking alongside the rest of them. Oh, just barely too late to stop the back from Cope. That was a heavy investment. Through space and time was just used, but luckily, hey, there's a Fury over here. No objectives on the right-hand side of the map, and also no Tiburones in the area. Sharks lurking in the water is not the phrase for this one. They are anywhere and everywhere but trying to contest this fight. A big old gold swing in favor of the sturdy Artisans here over the last couple of minutes. Now, only leading by about 1,500 gold. 3 tier 2s still standing. Of course, Fire Giant on everybody now except for Pagon. Makes it a lot more simple for them to know what their game plan is. Push, get gold, be happy doing it, maybe even take a couple of fights.
And I think this is where the sturdy Artisans should have a much easier time with the way the Tiburones comp wants to work. Also, I think Chalk is actually pretty good in offensive siege or defensive siege scenarios because of how much the rain covers on these sieges. I mean, it's a huge area with a big slow and a big attack speed slow. It is legitimately difficult to walk past it.
So far, they haven't had much fight back from the Tiburones. Griff is the ever-present threat. I'm going to be watching for stuns, the damage, but tier 2 in left, tier 2 in mid, get knocked down. Oni minions on left as well, starting to push forward for the sturdy Artisan, so giving them a little bit of pressure, pulling Heed away from the rest of the team. So far, it's not been any Phoenix sieges. It's all been the tier 2s. There's still a tier 1 over here on right, and Griff's going to clean that one up, no problem. The rest of the team move forward. They're going to get their third tier 2. Sybil jumps in and is going to get the cage, but again, no follow-up for any of it. No need to use the Phantom. They're going to hold on to that. Now getting aggressive. Tier 2 tower is going to go down. Cope jumps in, doesn't get a lot of damage. Instead, has to retreat. There's the through space and time. Doesn't connect on anybody, but it doesn't matter. It gets them moving forward. Griff starts off the fight, kills off Cope, and now they're jumping under the right-hand Phoenix looking for the lockdown. Heed seems to be the target. The team pulls back. They're focused on Spreen. Spreen seems to be going down much faster than anticipated, burned away by the help of Griff and Sino. Now the Phoenix is under duress, and it is going to be in trouble. It falls down relatively soon as Relentless One just zones everybody out. The team seems relatively low. They're going to move instead to the mid-Phoenix, try to play it safe.
No minions here. Minions are coming up on this left-hand side, and yeah, that's where the sturdy Artisans are going to try and grab another Phoenix. If they can get both of these outer Phoenixes, that would be huge, but Cope is up in 15.
Yeah, 15 seconds left for them to continue this sort of onslaught. Sino takes a portal right into Heed, and again, the lockdown is going to be good, but the focus is better from the rest of the team. They get the bird, and now they're getting aggressive. Sino gets a good knockup, not able to find a lot of damage in return. They're just controlling this fight as of right now. Not enough burn to deal with Sybil, to deal with Heed, despite the damage they have. In fact, they're turning this around. They're pushing them back. Cope has respawned, and this looks like a turnaround and a chase for the Tiburones.
Sybil doesn't have cage. That's still on cooldown. Yeah, that's going to be a full-on disengage from the sturdy Artisans, and just some poor decision-making there from the Tiburones. I mean, Cope dies with both of his relics up, got silence from that Chalk ultimate, but it's not like you should get caught off guard by that very often. There is a long wind-up before he slams the axe down, so would have loved to see Cope use the Aegis in that instance, and then maybe Beads. His jump was already down, but losing him was a real blow. And then Spreen, of course, with the transformation into the Chalk this time around, still went in as he'd been doing with the Bastet, but significantly slower on the Chalk than it is on the Bastet. Got punished for it easily.
Yeah, you could feel it a little chuggy from Spreen that time around. They're laying an ambush right around the Pyromancer. What could one team that just lost their Fire Giant buff do? Well, get aggressive on this side of the map. Relentless One seems to be the one that they're springing the trap onto, but they don't have enough lockdown. There's the Sentinel of Zeus, effectively a second health bar, but the shield gets burned through. Relentless One now has the backup. Griff had to use his relic there, the Aegis, just to stay alive, but Sino gets into the back, and Ionic gets credit for the kill, but all Sino's work to make sure Renjaro goes down. Cope shortly after. Spreen looking for the jump, but the overwood. The cats do not connect. Griff with a great leap. Doesn't find the kill onto Spreen, but maintains his life. And unfortunately now it's been a 2-for-none trade. Griff still looking for the fight. You have no health to work with, but there's that lifesteal buff chasing down Sybil. Sybil has no mana. Stun, eaten, but it's not going to matter here. One more kill, 4 for none, and they're going to run it down to the Titan and take game 1.
Listen, that's what the Chalk jungle is designed to do. Gets right on top of Renjaru, and it's just impossible for him to win the 1v1. up against Sino. Sino makes it happen on that dive, and Griff stays alive really well on the back end. Relentless One just had a great game on this Nike. Baited everyone to hit him. Survives anyways, as he had all game long.
Playing with their food is the way I would describe this one. 10 seconds. Cope's almost back, actually. Same thing with Renjara. That Titan is low, but if he can play this right, and if they keep doing this, he's going to have backup relatively soon. Renjara is going to be back. Cope's back now. Good stun from Heed, and he's keeping him away from the Titan. This should have been a win, but now they're having to fall back away. Maybe too much goofing around here for the sturdy Artisans. They get pushed out of the Titan room.
Yeah, that should have been an end, 100% of the time. I mean, you just ignore the RDO, you hit the Titan. The Titan took legitimately 0 damage from Gods, and instead they went for Heat. Because Gore, they hate us, and they want this game to go as long as possible. That's the only reason I can think of.
It's unfortunate for them, because we could just start chatting. We'd just be like, hey, the game should have ended there,
right,
so
yeah,
let's go.
we have casted the amount of smite that we feel like we should have. So now we will talk about not smite. That's where we've gotten to with the cast.
It has opened up a weird conversation point, though, where like you're still 9,000 gold ahead. You still are winning most of these fights, overwhelmingly in a lot of these. But there's a Fire Giant on the board. You're not necessarily in this position where falling back. The Phoenixes are about to respawn. I mean, this is maybe the best case scenario for the Tiburones for a game that you actually should have lost a minute ago. So we'll see if they're able to do anything about it here. Fire Giant's getting burned and burned fast. But Heats, Spreen, Cope, and Sybil are all in the neighborhood, all of which able to potentially try and jump in and swipe this one away. The last little bit of damage is going to be there. Sturdy Artisans confirm the Fire Giant, and they're still alive. Heed cannot say the same thing. Burst damage seems to be good, but Griff trying to get out, takes the portal through the wall, is able to stay alive. Spreen leaps maybe to their doom as everyone is going to chase this Bastet, but it's Sino who's too deep this time. Relentless One is as well alone. And unless they get a return kill, you get the Fire Giant. There's Spreen, and you start opening up the conversation, but Pagon gets deleted.
Cope got him, but then Griff gets the return kill. 2 for 2 with 2 weakened Phoenixes. Renjaro is going to be able to save this left side Phoenix, so the Tiburones have stabilized, at least for the moment, but they will lose this right side at the very least.
Yeah, you've got 2 frontline and admittedly Uller, and that's going to make quick work of pretty much anything that poses a threat. Might even be able to move forward. Didn't catch the timer when the FG went down as to whether or not it's been enhanced or not. It was very narrowly. No, quick math, I think it was. You're right, yeah, being able to find that. So big imports for them. Another kill onto Sybil. And of course, they're going to be able to find the damage mid. Phoenix sitting about half health. Griff looking to get aggressive. And this time, maybe not playing with their food as much as trying to do their due diligence. Renjaro makes it right back to the fountain, stays alive. Griff still trying to burn down and will successfully burn down the middle Phoenix. And at this point, you have the health bars and the damage. Might as well go for broke, get all 3, and find an overwhelming advantage.
So remember earlier when I said this is the point of the game where the mage becomes worth a lot less than the ADC, and it's got to be Griff that dies first among the backline. This is why. If the Sturdy Artisans had Pagon, they get maybe 1 Phoenix. They probably get right side Phoenix. Because Griff is the one that lives and not Pagon, they get all 3 Phoenixes and escape with time to spare. ADC diff in the late game, just being able to survive and keep the pressure up on these objectives over some of these mid mages. So Cope did hunt 1 backliner, but maybe got the wrong one.
Well, they pick up as well another Fury under their belt, so they're feeling pretty solid. The only thing they didn't scoop up in all of that we would maybe be more used to is that Pyromancer, which is just a very easy tick to be able to run through and burn on the way back through the jungle, if they so please. Not necessary at this point. 32 minutes in, arguably 4 minutes after Sturdy Artisan should have won already. We'll see if they're going to be able to hold on to it. This is a pretty good spot to be able to still find your win. 3 Phoenixes down on the other side. You've got 3 members with Fire Giant. You're starting to finish off most of, if not all of, your builds. All upgraded starters as well as all 6 slotted items, even some upgraded relics on the side of Sturdy Artisans. And they're starting to make their tear through the jungle, waiting for one last clash against the Tiburones.
Interesting that it's Bumba's hammer for Griff, but might not get a chance to talk about it because Sino's got Cope in a bad spot.
Yeah, I can't think of a worse place to be in. Does manage to dodge out a lot of the damage, but not enough to save their life. Cope caught out 60 seconds without the jungler on the side of the Tiburones, and that is just the go button for the Sturdy Artisans. They're going to continue getting aggressive, but they don't quite have the damage or lockdown that they anticipated. Rinjaru Spring going to be back there. Rinjaru's just gone! Sino finds Sybil. This time around, the Titan's going to be taking a lot more damage. Spreen is still here to look for some clapback damage, but there's just not enough presence from the Tiburones. I need to watch that back. I don't know where Rinjaru went, but hey, that thing I said earlier, were they in the game? They did it this time.
Yeah, they did it this time. I do. Uller went like this, and then he went like this, and it was the 3 and the 1, and they hit at the same time, and Rinjaru was gone.
Just dead. And that's, I mean, admittedly, we've seen a lot of that lately from Uller. It's a terrifying amount of damage to have to deal with the Sturdy Artisans. Get game number 1. Again, a little bit, I don't know if I want to call it a fumble, because it wasn't a fumble. They didn't make a mistake and miss out on the win. They just straight up dodged the win for a few minutes
They
there.
decided they didn't want to win at that point. Yeah, they made that choice consciously, I'd argue.
But lucky for them, they still get the 1-0. So we're going to go to a quick break. We'll break down that game and then go into game number 2 right after this.
a sentimental way, and your spirit seems to bright up my life. No waver to my psyche, I'll navigate precisely to the stars that guide through the night. I've got the energy to make our love bound to unfold. It's such a remedy, yeah, that your heart brings to my soul.
gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
That's right, you can go to youtube.com/SmiteVod and experience all of the history of the SBL. I was watching some Season 2 videos not too long ago. I was looking for a very specific game. I think I found it. I can't remember. I got lost in a really, really deep torrent of just watching them. Of course, VOD, that's video on demand for those of you who don't know, so you can go watch not just what we had and showcased there in that video, which is Seasons 1 through, of course, Season 7, but also Season 8 games. If you miss any of those, you'll be able to go and take a peek, see on youtube.com/SmiteVod and make sure that you don't miss out on any of the action. Or if you just really want to go back and watch some specific games for whatever reason, which I do quite often, honestly, you can go back and watch those. But again, it's gore, it's aggro as we move forward. Well, I guess we recap game number 1 there for Sturdy Artisans and the Tiburones, and then we'll move to game number 2.
Okay.
And game 1 was really Tiburones, then really not Tiburones, and then kind of maybe a little bit of Tiburones, just mainly because the Sturdy Artisans started playing with their food. They had a really big turnaround, and a lot of it is oriented around this front line.
Front line was solid this game for the Sturdy Artisans. I mean, Relentless One just felt completely unstoppable in this game. I mean, he had the one death early for I don't know if he was First Blood or if Sino was, but after that, Relentless One just could not be stopped, consistently putting pressure on the back line. Impossible to kill. Ionic was in the right spots, had some good shields, had some good cataclysms. That one was on both backliners in that fight, so that's always huge. Just made it very difficult for the Tiburones when they were playing these really spread out team fights and really by design for their composition. You can't 1v1 a Nike. That's just not going to work.
It didn't. Several times throughout this game, Cope at the very end there killed off, and that was a big deal. Early on, Spreen, I remember at one point calling it out, 4-1, ends the game at 4-5, not able to get as impactful. I think we actually even saw the moment that broke, and it was once we saw the last Bastet transformation, then turned into Chalk, and nothing seemed to click right from there. Speaking of Chalk, I mean, Sino did a decent chunk of damage, a lot, that he was able to throw out there.
Yeah, when you're 1v5 most of the game, then yeah, you'll get some damage.
And he managed to do so. But yeah, like you said, didn't necessarily reflect too well on the slash line. A lot of damage coming his way. But hey, it's still got to win, and that's all that matters, I think, at the end of the day for them.
Exactly. They got the win. Chungle gets the dub. It doesn't really matter what the score line is. We don't necessarily need to go in 1v4 all the time with these ultimates, but we could if we're still going to win at the end.
Yeah, I mean, and at that rate, you know what? He played it as perfectly as you could get. We'll see if that continues here in game number 2 as we move into picks and bans for this one. Again, Sturdy Artisans will stay as the first pick team. Last time, they banned Rat, they banned Thana, they banned Terra in the top 3. The other side, something Tiamat. They let through Artio and Odin. I remember that much.
Yeah, and immediately they banned the Artio. They're like, look, we beat it, and we don't want to play against it again. It's just too much to deal with. They were really focused on Cope and what he was going to do, but then Cope comes out and has a very good performance on the Bastet anyways. And sometimes that kind of makes you reevaluate. Like, all right, well, that didn't work super well. We can still take away the things we're most afraid of, but trying to triple or quadruple down on these buffs to take Cope out of his comfort zone clearly isn't going to work.
Oh, the Wukong, that was one of the bands that I forgot about. Umoja was the other one. So Sturdy Artisans so far pretty much on par. Trading out the Terra for the Artio would make sense to me, but we'll see what they do with their last ban, if it's going to be the Ratatosker or if they're going to go back to that Terra. They also, running it back, first picked Geb, which is something that Ionic looks good on. Ionic looked good on, so it's not anything to complain about. Plus, we've seen a lot of success just in the last week from a lot of the teams that were willing to pick him up in the SBL.
Exactly. So I anticipate that if I'm the Tiburones, I can expect a Geb selection. And Geb is one of those gods that there aren't hard counter matchups. There's not a god that you can pick and go, oh, now Geb can't play at all. You know, it's not like Susano and you pick Ares or something along those lines. Geb is just one of those picks that, can we exploit his weak part of the game? Could we try and pressure dual lane a little bit more? The Cupid pick for Renjaru did not look particularly good. I think I might go Uller near the top here from the Tiburones, try and take that out of Griff's hands. guarantee some pressure here for the Tiburones.
Well, so far it's the Morrigan, which is not quite how you spell Uller, so maybe going to need a little bit more for that.
There isn't
one.
a single U.
Yeah, and you know what? It's
Or an L.
Like, they've got too many R's as well. It's just too much to be spelled the right way, as they do forego it. This time they pick up the Nike, which, I mean, Nike was really big. You had said it, don't 1v1 it, but the Geb Uller was phenomenal. Like, it was a good duo lane.
Yeah, look, I don't mind the Nike selection. I just don't think I would have gone the Morrigan in that slot. I think you go Uller Nike in that top 2 and you're feeling pretty good. That being said, Spreen had a lot of really good plays in the early to mid game, got them off to a very good lead. That was a game that the Tiburones should have won. They were up like 7-0 in kills, had a pretty substantial gold lead, fumbled the bag a little bit to get to where they were. So giving him that same style of pick, getting this Nike away from Relentless One, I think are all positive things on the other side.
Well, they pick up the Khepri. Khepri, for a few weeks there, and honestly, admittedly, just maybe behind Geb in my mind, has been one of the top picks, something that is just, again, frustrating to play against is the way I like to describe him, but he gives your team a secondary life. If you filter in Spreen, all of a sudden maybe you have another life on your team, and it becomes a 7v5, which is a fun math to have to do in the middle of the fight, but we'll see how this Khepri ends up panning out for them. Still needs his lane partner, where they ban out the Achilles, they ban out the Odin, and on the other side it's Ratatosker, and still thus waiting, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's another shot towards the jungle, since that was something that they were focused on last time, trying to control Cope a little bit. And it will be that Susano once again. So slightly less shots over into the jungle, but still Cope being controlled.
Yeah, the same style, but Willich left open, and that's like Cope's god. Like, that is his pick that he has traditionally gone to, and it's got a really positive matchup against Uller. I'd kind of expect it here from Cope, and that's a pick that if I'm the Artisans, I didn't ban it, but I'm like, all right, hey, let's try and think around it. Let's make sure that we aren't just picking some jumps willy-nilly in this instance. They don't do that in the mid. They go Pagon back on that Giannis, and what I'm assuming is going to be Sino's pick, which is the Nemesis. Yeah, Relentless One likes playing this Robin in solo. It's another one of his picks. He likes playing Nike. He likes playing Robin. He likes playing Camazotz. Those type of picks are usually what you see from him. So it's not surprising to me that they go the Nemesis here for Sino, try and give themselves an easy win condition, try and take out this Nike.
Ooh, but not the Awelish. Loki locked in at the very end there for the Tiburones. Someone that we have seen a lot of games for, and admittedly the stats for the SCC say he's got a 100% win rate, but not something that we've seen, at least in my recent memory. I think in Europe he's been suffering a little bit, but also in the SBL hasn't necessarily been popping off the way that we were used to at the beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year, he looked really good. And I think that with all those itemization changes, with all the farm coming back to the jungle, I don't see a reason why Loki wouldn't go back to being one of those premier assassins. So I think the pick can work here in this instance for Cope, but again, and this is really the case for all assassins. Assassins, by nature, are single target. And Geb is very good at saving one target. And Loki is one of those gods that can you do enough damage without using Assassinate in order to force this Geb shield, make them use some relics, then use Assassinate to get out. Sometimes you kind of need to lead with that ultimate, and when you do that, I think he's going to be pretty vulnerable to this Geb.
Well, let's find out here in Game 2 if this Loki is going to be able to have the prowess that we could expect out of it. Again, something that was very, very overwhelming in the first phase of this year. Fell off real hard. It's been a while since we've gotten to see a good Loki. Even last week when it was picked up in the SBL, didn't quite hit, I think, the way that it was anticipated to. Johnny, I believe, played one of those, and then a few others that didn't quite hit. Nemesis is the one that I think is interesting. Sino playing an assassin is always something that is going to catch your eye and be interesting, because it's not it's normal, and it's almost too normal for Sino. But also this Robin in the solo lane, how does it feel just against the Nike, I guess, overall? But I mean, like, it's not something that we've seen a lot of, period, like in just the history of Robin.
Yeah, Robin traditionally definitely a jungler, but has had some metas where he's viable, I'd say, over here in the solo lane. It's a god that you can get away with starting Sunder on because of all his CC immunity, so I kind of like it for that aspect. Up against the Nike, you get a solo laner where you can afford to go the relic that's going to counter her, and you don't need to worry about waiting until level 12 to feel like, you know, can I fit it, can I not? It's aggressive, and it can work.
Well, now it's Pagon. Not quite locked down enough. The portal will be good. Unstable vortex through the wall. Sino taking around the area. Maybe overcommits. No, good double dash. We'll make sure they disengage just in time. That Loki gets good damage down quick, though. Pagon, I think, is going to need to be a little more worried, maybe just as worried as last game.
A lot of damage coming from this Loki, and with that Dark Omen as well from the Morgan, makes the burst damage look that much more impressive. I think that it's clearly been assassin picks with this Giannis in mind. Pagon has certainly been a thorn in a lot of team sides over the last few years in the SCC and in the Tiburones. I mean, I think they picked the Bastet because it has a pretty good Giannis matchup. I do think Loki is one of the better assassins at killing the Giannis. Doesn't surprise me.
Cyno's going to blink forward. Nice stun from Spreen, but there's the double dash. Cope doesn't have any mana. Cyno doesn't have enough follow-up. Spreen's one hit away from being first blood. Pagon's going to be able to find it just under the tower. Cope's still low. A good unstable vortex. Won't find the kill. Could at least chunk him down. They're going to back off. That's first blood for Sturdy Artisans.
Man, those were some pristine autos from Pagon. My man could play Hunter if necessary, because those were on point. Threads the needle past the Cope, who was trying to get the body blocks in. Spreen steps up because Cope is the immediate target, and then gets punished for trying to save his mid laner's life.
And a nice stun, like you'd said, wasn't enough to peel off enough that Cyno just chases him down. And this Nemesis getting engaged early on is a huge deal. Still looking for the start and probably going that Jotuns that we've gotten used to seeing so far. And it feels like that's just beneficial. More slice and dice usually means better time for Nemesis. Relentless One's relatively low, though. Good jump from He. Doesn't get the knockup. Cope's here, but doesn't have a lot of mana to work with. Relentless One makes it under the tower. Now Cyno is over here, recognizes that the Loki has no mana, and it's going to be the turnaround. A couple of autos, and then one more shot. You just have to be able to find it. No one's been able to lock him down just yet. The last of the mana used on the decoy, but there it is. Relentless One finds number 2 for the team. There's Spreen in the jungle. Cyno's too low to fight. Relentless One way too deep and all alone right now. Tries to run away. He has no mana, but there's Spreen, and that's all that matters. Through space and time flies through, and Cyno's looking for more. He's going to go for the kill, try to get a return, but doesn't have the damage, and there's too much around him to help.
Too many minions. I think those minions body blocked his autos, and he did a good job of dancing in between them, as those followed Cyno all the way from solo lane to the enemy back harpies. And really prevented it. And what a transform! Spreen nearly sniped out Cyno. No shot. He goes for this.
He was thinking about it, and maybe a little too heavily there for a second. Cyno will be able to pull back. Hey, Relentless One's back in the engagement after falling a little bit earlier. They'll get the blue buff, and they fall back. And now it's Ionic who's going to be in some trouble. Good setup, good control. But is it too much too soon? He's walking away, but not with his life. Ranjaru gets credit for the kill, and the Tiburones tie up the kills just like that, 2-2.
Just an easy pick on the Geb, and I was talking earlier about how Geb doesn't have that many negative matchups, but he's really easy to kill in the early game, especially. So you go with picks that are good at killing tanks, and I think Khepri is near the top of that list among supports, that you just get opportunities to just hit the root, hit the abduct, and because that isn't DR'd, these tanks sit there for much longer than they're used to and can easily take too much damage. So that's exactly what happens to Ionic. Didn't have Cataclysm available at the moment as he was only level 4.
Yeah, now that he's level 5, things become a little more interesting. Also going for the Blink. It was a conversation last week. And now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been an interesting thing to at least try to weave in. There's no real room for it in the waiting room. So I can just ask you here, Blink has been skipped over by a lot of supports. We've been seeing, and kind of after we talked to Mike a little bit about it, a lot of discussion about the fact that there's just a lot of good relics for supports to pick up that Blink kind of got thrown to the side. But Ionic's gone for it early on, and he didn't have it last game. Is that going to help with their engage?
Definitely. I mean, anytime you've got Blink Cataclysm, it's going to make your engage a lot more easier, a lot more linear. And I think that there are a lot of really good support relics, but in my mind, there's always the option to go for something like Blink.
Well, he doesn't have any options there. That one's all she wrote. Cyno comes over, Cyno ults, and Heed goes down. We'll have to watch Ionic to see if that Blink comes in handy. There, it comes in handy for Cyno. And so I can only imagine. But that was what it was last game. There was no Blink for the Geb. A lot of Blink ults from Cyno on the Chalk, which maybe contributed to the 2-6 slash line that we saw. Maybe.
Oh, it did.
Again, a lot of the, how did you word it? The 2v5, 1v5s, 1v4s.
Yeah, he was running it.
Probably also helped a little bit in terms of slicing up that slash line a little more. But either way, the control shifts ever so slightly in favor of Sturdy Artisans. Actually starting to push onto a 2,000 gold lead despite the fact that the kills are relatively even, showing how much farm they've been able to strip away on the map.
I mean, Sino is just significantly ahead of Cope in XP per minute, and you'll see that reflected in the levels. I mean, level leads everywhere for the Sturdy Artisans except for in duo lane where Griff and Ranjaru were still even.
Well, luckily for them, depending on where the Scorpion goes
Whoa.
down, should be going towards Cope. Yeah, that's an ult from Pagon.
Scared him.
Probably unnecessary, but yeah, scared. And ultimately stays alive, and I guess at the end of the day, that's all you want. But with the Scorpions gone, we're going to have a Gold Fury spawning up relatively soon. Maybe a chance for the duo lane to show off what they have. Jotun's Wrath just now finished for Sturdy Artisans over there, for Uller specifically, Griff. Might be able to start fighting relatively soon.
This is where you expect him to start to do well, but Ichabal there for Ranjaru, just like he did on the Cupid, means that if auto attacks start getting traded, he's going to start winning because he's going to steal away some of that potency from Griff and bring it onto his side. So that's probably why we don't see this Uller going super aggressive, because of that Ichabal on the other side.
And you know, it is something that I'm going to double check on. I remember this, and this isn't a question on Waiting Room, so I can use this one. Hu Yi lost all 5 of the games that he played last week. Did not
Tough.
look necessarily great. We'll see if Ranjaru can counter that a little bit. He just collapsed on in the solo lane, but are they going to be able to find a turnaround? This damage is there. Cope is able to find it. They at least get 1 in the 2-for-1 trade, but maybe making it 2-for-2. Spreen jumps in. Spreen misses everything there. Sino walks out with the shield, and now Pagon and Ionic have rotated to the solo lane. Sino still looks a little hungry. The blue buffs is spawning up. Honestly, might be biting off more than he can chew. Has to back off for Spreen. Portal's there. They're actually going to get aggressive. The slow is ready. Cataclysm comes out. Beads in retaliation. Spreen should be able to make it under the tier 2, but the blue buff gets stripped away.
All right, not Spreen's best moments there, Gormizer. We could add that.
Caught it
one
all
below
on camera.
lights. Yeah, that was tough. I just don't really understand the Robin transform either. I mean, Robin. So when you're playing the Morrigan, you want to have your presets. You always want to try and have your defensive preset available for you to instantly transform. And in that situation, it should be Nike, right? That you're going for defensive transformations, because she has the most survivability on the team. Then you want your, okay, here's what I'm going with if I'm going offensively. Which character is going to be the best for me to transform if I'm in an offensive scenario? And I just can't imagine that it's Robin. It's got to be Loki to try and finish off someone who's low. I mean, it is a much easier ultimate to land. You CC them. You've got a little bit of mobility with the extra movement speed from the Vanish. Going with the Robin is kind of the splitting the difference. It has defensive nature between the overhead kick and the Mystic Rush, and the offensive nature of the Jotun's Wrath Rush there for Relentless One. But I guess it's because he's maxing the 2. That's another factor, is that you're inheriting you're keeping your leveling order.
Yeah.
And it's just being applied. And obviously leveling Loki Decoy, not great for getting those kills. But it's not like overhead kick is that much better when it comes to when it comes to offense. And the ultimates make the biggest difference, and Assassinate's so much better in that situation.
And unfortunately for Spreen, doesn't find the kill there. Ionic trying to stay alive. Cataclysm just gets dropped. There's a transformation into the Nemesis. Ionic gets taken down in the process. Sino, though, looking to turn it around onto now his namesake in Spreen. He's going to be able to get a lot of damage, but eats too much in the process. Still, Pagon with the fadeaway shots able to find that. Relentless One rotates in, and they go 2 for 3 with the kills coming up in favor of the Tiburones. Now Sybil is locked down. Heat is still around here, though. Relentless One needs one more tap. There's the Scarab's Blessing, and Sybil walks out with their life, and the Tiburones get a favorable trade.
Really big play there from the Tiburones, and that time Spreen's on the money with the transform, and again, the same game plan. Let's just isolate this Geb, pluck him back, get an easy kill, and it was really good spacing from Cope and Spreen. They collapse whenever he's silenced and abducted, and then as soon as he's about to be unsilenced, they spread out. Only Sybil gets hit by that Cataclysm, and then it's an instant Nemesis transform, makes it for the easy kill.
Much closer game here so far in game number 2. About 1,000 gold separating them, not even between the two of these teams. And 7 kills to 6 as of right now. The experience still leaning a little more in favor of the Sturdy Artisans, but you can see that massive lead they had earlier, which was amounting essentially a level in every role, maybe a little bit more, has now been dwindled down to mostly be equal across the board. In fact, a little bit of a lead there for Ranjaru. So keeping things a lot closer here for the Tiburones. Although last time, they were the ones with the early game lead, so maybe not exactly where they'd want it to be. As instead we see Relentless One. Where better to be than super deep on the side of the map, but it's Spreen right now, who eats it through space and time, falls back, stays alive for now. That's more than you can say for Sybil. Relentless One punished for their greed, and ends up getting chased down just inside the blue buff, killed off, and ends up being 1-for-1 support for Solo.
Gormizer, I've been casting this game for a long time.
Yeah.
5 years now.
It's a long time.
Casting Smite. I think there's a legitimate argument that I've casted more Smite than anybody. With all the extra stuff that, that we've done over the years.
And like how little Hindu's done the last 2.
Damn, okay.
Well, hey,
you're not wrong.
Hey, he makes the schedule. That's on him.
That's true. I just saw something I've never seen before. A Geb ult killed a man. Sybil died to a Cataclysm. Only possible after the recent changes.
As like I think we were mentioning it, like if you had Soul Reaver in the past, then there was a way to get it done, but like the stars had to align, and if you managed to do it, you were a god amongst men at that point. Geb killed a man with his ult. With his ult, right? He's gotten kills before, but not with Cataclysm. Wow. Sometimes you just got to take the little things, you know. The little things. And today I watched. You have cast a lot of Smite.
A lot of Smite. Some would say too much. I wouldn't, because I've really enjoyed it. But that was one I haven't seen before, so that made me a little happy on the inside.
We like that. That just feels good. Now we'll see what they can do with that. They get the kill with the Cataclysm. We'll see if they can continue this onslaught. Pyromancer is burned down, and Sturdy Artisans are able to pick that one up no problem. I am going to be completely honest. I missed the Fury when it happened. I don't know what I was thinking about. My brain just blotted that part out of the game. So a Fury has been taken down on the left-hand side. And now that Fire Giant is the last neutral objective that stands. A good 2,000 some change gold lead for the Sturdy Artisans. And now they can start to put that pressure all around the map. You had mentioned trying to play against Geb's weakest portion of the game, which I had admit has already passed. Pagon just gets taken out in the mid lane, and I think that takes the wind out of the sails for the Sturdy Artisans. They're still looking for Sybil, but there's going to be the Suns, and there's the Scarab's Blessing as well. Sybil stays alive, and it looks like the Sturdy Artisans are trying to fall back. Spreen making a big rotation over here. They're going to catch Griff off guard. He gets knocked back. The beads are there, but he's not going to be able to escape this one. Spreen finds the kill, and what was a very innocent poke fest turns into a 2-for-none.
And now Ionic is going to be the third, it looks like. Isolated underneath this tier 1, though a good knock-up, and Sino may have just gotten baited to come in and help. Should have let him go, buddy, but no, instead, Sino low. He actually kills Cope with a Crusher dot, but Spreen does come through with the kill in the end. So is that a 4-for-1 now for the Tiburones and a tier 1 tower on this left-hand side? And that's what these compositions that they've been drafting continue to do. They keep going with these very scrappy styles of compositions. And it makes it very easy to find these isolated picks around the map.
And isolated is the easy term. Pagon just decimated in mid lane. Didn't even have a chance to try and fight back for that one. A good swing, as you had highlighted, for the Tiburones to be able to get those kills in their favor. Not necessarily a big swing for for gold, I should say. Does take a good chunk away from the lead that the Sturdy Artisans had, but unfortunately for them, they get a big fight with no big objective on that side of the map afterward. So it has to slow the roll just a little bit. One more of those, and that's a Fire Giant. But sometimes that's hard to ask for. that is a tall order, unless you can catch Pagon off one more time. And now the beads are available. Pagon also went Blink instead of the Aegis. That's an interesting choice.
Yes, I agree with the word choice of interesting. I think that Blink Giannis is very good. I think that a lot of times as Giannis, you have such a small window to live that if you Aegis next to a wall, you're dead before you're able to get through the portal. So in those instances, I do think Blink almost provides you more safety than Aegis in some situations. But I think there's a really telegraphed burst from the Tiburones. Something like a Nike Ultimate, being able to Aegis that is really big. Being able to Aegis the stun and bigger damage part of Assassinate as Loki flips onto you is really big. And I think that you might just die if you try and beads and walk through the portal. We'll see if it comes back to bite him. I do think that Blink Giannis in general is probably underutilized, but this might not have been my favorite comp to play it against.
Like you said, though, keep our eyes on it, see how it fares. Maybe it'll be the end-all, be-all. Maybe we'll see a couple more deaths from Pagon that we maybe didn't want to. Otherwise, the Giannis looking so far so good, 2-2-2. Nothing that you couldn't ask for, except to maybe go undying, which is just ludicrous to try and ask for somebody, especially at this octane of game. Everybody has been attacking. I say that, and then of course I look down and see that Rinjaru hasn't died. Pagon trying not to die, but there's
Nice
that
shield.
scenario. What a great shield from Ionic to make sure Pagon stays alive. Otherwise, that was exactly what you had highlighted as being problematic with that assassinate damage.
Really, really good shield from Ionic, and really good patience there from Cope. Just waits for Pagon to use the ultimate and then chases him through with that assassinate. And Cope's damage only going up. I don't think Pagon's survivability is going up at all.
Well, staying alive there means that you have a little bit of a fight around this Oni Fury. It's the engage from the Tiburones. They're going deep onto Sino. Sino uses the shield, heals up a little bit, and Pagon comes back in to get the damage turnaround for his team. Spreen has the Scarab's Blessing and has run away, but now Heed has turned and is isolated. Sybil is just around the corner, same with Rinjaru, and Spreen's looking to come back in. Relentless One jumps forward. Relentless One stays alive. Another great shield from Ionic, making sure to make that solo laner survive the engagement, but it's not enough to survive for Rinjaru. Finally, first death of the game, and Griff is the one who delivers that killing blow with a nice hail of arrows.
Man, Ionic is just making life too difficult right now for the Tiburones. A great shield on the Sino, then a great shield right after that. I mean, just perfect play coming out of this Geb. And Sino got maybe the most value out of a Retribution shield I've ever seen. He healed so much right there. Was really, really good timing with it. Used the ultimate at the right time. That looked like Tiburones were going to blow that fight out. But instead it's the Sturdy Artisans who were able to win it really, really handily and get themselves their second Fury of the game. This one in Oni Fury. A big team fight win right there on a close team fight for the Sturdy Artisans.
And that's kind of the point I wanted to make earlier, where it's just, you know, you get a great fight from the Tiburones, but there was nothing to get afterward, which we've seen, I mean, almost too many times. We have seen games even earlier this year in the SBL where it's like, cool, you're getting these kills, you're winning these fights, but it's not giving you anything. You're not getting experience. Right now, there's a nice through space and time, maybe expecting someone to be on the Fire Giant or something to be going on the right-hand side. Maybe they just wanted to get there faster, and that is exactly what they accomplished. Sturdy Artisans start up the Pyromancer. Pagon and Griff and Ionic should have enough damage to secure this one. Sybil's hanging around. Sybil might just get caught out because of it. Finally, the rotation comes through. Rinjaru and Spreen are now in the neighborhood, but that's going to be the callback from the Sturdy Artisans.
Really, really good idea from the Artisans. I don't know if they thought that Tiburones were on Pyro, but that ultimate was in position to steal it, but also, of course, give the portals in order to get them there for the Pyromancer, knowing that the Tiburones were either on it or they're spread out trying to handle these Oni waves. So heads up play.
Well, Sino rotates over to the solo lane. He now has that ult on him. That health bar is going to dwindle fast. The shield's dwindling incredibly quickly there. Heat's still alive, though. Relentless One goes up, down, and now the damage is getting turned around onto Relentless One. Not going to be able to stay alive through that. Cope and Heed combine to kill off the solo laner, and Sino eats a through space and time from Spreen's transformation. Now Spreen getting aggressive. They are still able to go 1-for-1 with Cope dropping down against Relentless One.
You know, many people would say, why didn't Relentless One Mystic Rush away from the two people? But they might not know that it is a legally binding contract that you must up-down with all ultimates that are capable of doing so as a solo laner. Have you ever seen a Bologna ult away? Never once in your freaking life.
No.
It's not happening. Up, down, right away. We're getting stuns. We're getting damage off. We're boosting our numbers. Same thing there for Relentless One. I've got the option to Mystic Rush away.
No.
But as a solo laner, you're not a true solo laner unless you're willing to up-down at all points.
And that solidifies it too. I mean, we were I was questioning personally the Raven in the solo lane is something that we even when he was a warrior didn't see.
Think about iconic warriors throughout Smite, right? Bologna, up-downs.
Up-down.
Osiris,
Up-downs.
up-downs. Chalk kind of up-downs in his ultimate if
Yeah.
you stand still. So that one counts for me. You've got Tyr, iconic up-down. I mean, you've got options.
If you're a solo, honestly, if you're a solo laner, you're doing a lot of up-downs in your life. And sometimes that dunk is worth it.
There's
We'll
the
see if
blink.
it's worth it here. Yeah, Pagon with the blink finds Rinjaru and gets exactly what they need. Cope sitting about 3/4 HP. Relentless One a little lower than that. They're still getting the poke out here around this red buff. Tier 1 tower in mid's getting a little bit of pressure on it as well. And it is a 4v5. Tiburones pushing back the Sturdy Artisans, keeping them on their toes. They're separated just enough. The Tiburones don't want to fight this. This is going to be a push-up from the Sturdy Artisans. more or less knocking down the tier 1 tower, getting a little bit of poke in the process. Cope is back and behind, and Cope finds huge damage onto Pagon, and then the ult onto Griff. The Aegis keeps him alive for now, but it's not enough to run away. What a great double kill from Cope, and now the rundown comes through for Tiburones. They're going to lock up Relentless when Cope gets himself a triples, looking for 4 with the knockback. Sino isolated, good Geb shield, and it's keeping him alive, but not long enough. Spreen seals the deal and gets the 4th kill.
A comedy of errors there for the Sturdy Artisans, because off the portal, it should have been an easy Unstable Vortex and Axe into an Uller combo. They should have been able to burst Sybil hard from that moment, but not only do those abilities get mistimed, but then Griff and Pagon shade back to the right together. They're touching one another, and that is a cardinal sin for your backliners to be that close. Loki should be able to AoE your backliners about as often as you should die to a fire giant where there's no one around. It should be never, but these things happen. Just like Pagon and Griff were holding hands in the jungle and Cope's able to kill them both. Spreen died to a fire giant.
Up in the fire giant, KDA, that's all we got to focus on.
True, 1 for 1.
I think it was like 0.1 or something, so it's not necessarily going too well, but like you said, it's a 1-1 as of this game. So he looks pretty good. Spreen still gone for 30 seconds. Team with the fire giant, 22 minutes into the game. They've got a 3-kill lead, and the gold is about as even as you could expect at this point. 500 separating the two teams, but that's going to be a very quick swing once these towers start to fall. There's 5 standing for the Tiburones, 4 on the other side for the Sturdy Artisans. That opens a lot of gold for the Tiburones to try and knock down and swing in their favor.
And if I'm the Artisans, I'm really not that concerned as long as we can weather the storm of this particular fire giant, because the Artisans haven't lost a 5-on-5 yet. You know, they lost that one fight where they lose 4 for 1, but it started over in mid, then kind of cascaded into duo. They weren't grouped. They haven't lost a grouped 5-on-5 yet, unless Pagon and Griff walk next to each other and both get destroyed by a Loki, which again really shouldn't happen. So if I'm if I'm on the Artisans, I'm going, all right, fellas, it's okay. You know, not a big deal. We just can't do that again. Let's give up what we need to give up. I think that includes at least 1 tier 2 tower, probably 2, and then not give up a Phoenix. Maybe don't even give up these tier 2s for free. I think I'd probably stick around and see how aggressive the Tiburones want to be around these tier 2s, because I think in a grouped 5-on-5, the Artisans should still be favored.
We'll have to see if they can get the group 5-on-5. Pagon trying to join. Pagon trying to join fights has been a detriment sometimes. Pagon getting caught out. They're going to be fighting on the side. A little bit of damage thrown in the tier 2's way. Heed going for the loop around. Cope as well, lurking on the right side of the jungle. But it's the 5-on-5. Despite the split from the Tiburones, a leap in from Heed. Pagon's going to be isolated, but a good Geb shield. Tier 2 tower still goes down. The fight stands. Sybil is the one who's walking away with low and almost no health at this point. Cope forced to ult, Sino ults in retaliation. Cataclysm from Geb, and there's going to be the through space and time. They're looking to get aggressive. They're trying to get in here, but Pagon eats too much damage, has to portal themselves back out. There's a retaliation through space and time from Spreen, and it looks like that's going to be the disengage from the Tiburones. Tier 2, and then they're forced back.
But that's still a lot of time wasted there by the Sturdy Artisans. They keep the Tiburones using relics. I mean, Spreen uses both of his and the ultimate. Beads down for Cope Baby as well. So now you've got the option to defend a little bit more offensively on this tower.
Trying to get aggressive. They've healed up, which is enough that you can save for Sybil specifically, but they used a lot of ults during that last little brawl. And you still have Relentless one, maybe not as much as you would want. Sinos is almost back, same thing for Cope. I expected that to be a little more aggression. You had mentioned killing time. 40 seconds left on the power play for the Fire Giant. That's going to be the leap in from Heat. Gets a good knockup. Ionic pulled back. The shield is not there for him. The rollout exists. They're going to be able to get out of there. Sino just gets deleted in a 1v5. Everyone turns, everyone looks, everyone kills him dead. And now Relentless one forced to run away alongside Ionic. That tier 2 tower should be falling. Ionic gets pulled back, and that's going to be a double kill for Cope as they take down the tier 2 tower. Fire Giant, 15 seconds left. They're going to start pushing into the Phoenix.
Man, the Sturdy Artisans had done the thing. They defended properly, and then they decided to go a little bit too aggressive on that tier 2. Are the Tiburones going to try and end here?
They're walking into the Titan room as of right now. They're trying to play around, see what damage they have through space and time. Thrown out by Pagon. Griff is relatively low as well and tries to get aggressive. Good root from the Khepri, and Cope finds his target. Cope gets a kill onto the Hunter. The Tiburones are taking down the Titan as of right now. Relentless One gets 1 kill in return, but that is not enough for the team, and the Tiburones tie up the set.
Man, what a turnaround from the Tiburones. The Artisans make one real mistake and instantly are punished for it. It's Fire Giant, it's towers, it's kills, it's the Titan after that. And you got to give a lot of credit to Cope. I feel like he was the difference maker on this Loki. Got double digits in the kill department. That one big play, punishing Griff and Pagon for grouping up, and then continuing to win some of these trades in the late game.
And then just an unfortunate spill there at the end. Sino, I think if he doesn't end up going down, there's probably more of a defense from the team. But he disappears, Eonic shortly thereafter, and that was just the go button for the Tiburones. They push us to game number 3. We're going to break down game 2 and move into that right after this. Tiburones tie us up at 1-1. So we move to winner takes all. But before we get to that, we're going to break down game number 2. A lot that went right there for the Tiburones, maybe a lot that went wrong there for the Sturdy Artisans. Both, I want to say, one half the same coin as it all shakes out. And honestly, Aggro, it just feels like a couple of really good plays from Cope that are capitalizing on some mispositionings from the Sturdy Artisans.
That's obviously the turning point, right? Is that Pagon and Griff end up going the same way right next to one another, and they get punished for it pretty heavily. But it isn't just Cope that made that happen. I mean, Sybil looked much better on the Kepri in Game 2 than he did in Game 1. I thought the Nike pick switching over for Heed was really strong, and keeping this one off of that really potent frontliner. Overall, I'm happy with how the Tiburones played. I think they executed on their game plan fairly well. Did it take a pretty critical mistake for them to be in position to do it? Yes, but you play the hand you're dealt, and that time they were able to make it work.
Sometimes that's all you need. There's also a moment, and you had kind of mentioned it, but when it was a 4-for-1 trade, maybe a 4-for-none trade, that resulted in a Fury afterward. That was a very good pickup for the Tiburones, but a lot of it started with just an insta-gib onto Pagon in the mid lane before anybody else was involved. And that's that play you were talking about just a second ago, being able to pick up both Pagon and Griff in a double kill. I think it's a triple here as well, but that one was going to happen no matter what Cope did. I think just a lot of good plays from the jungle. And, of course, being able to blow up Sino at the very end, right about here, that really solidified a victory for them. I was actually surprised to see them go for the end the way they did. I mean, they rushed it with, I want to say, brilliant shot calling, because I would have been too timid.
Yeah, that was a good call. I mean, Ranjaro still had the ultimate, so that made a big difference. A good, aggressive call from the Tiburones. And then they focus the Titan, which will lead to you winning the majority of the time.
I wonder what that could be alluding to.
It was Game 1, Gore, whenever
right.
the Sturdy Artisans had a chance to win, and instead they tried to kill Heed, who was on Ardio, who was just able to really stall the game out, and then they had to play
Titan
for
was
5
here,
minutes.
and then he just goes over there, and
I'm
the whole
referring to
team
that
followed.
in particular, right?
And the 4 minutes that followed, where we were still in game,
still casting, yeah.
We still had to watch it. We'll see if they are even in a position to do something like that here in game number 3's move to picks and bans and see what they adjust overall. Remember that Loki, as essential as it felt, was a last pick for the Tiburones, so it's not even like they were really highly coveted. That was over the Awelish, though, which was unbanned, and despite Cope being a lightning rod for a lot of these, it's going to be a change-up from the Sturdy Artisans, something that has given them trouble 2 games in a row. They're finally going to go ahead and say no to that. The Morrigan banned off.
Yeah, I don't mind that call. I mean, Spreen's been able to control that mid lane laning phase very well and give Pagon some real trouble. I'd be kind of surprised if Pagon goes back to the Giannis in this game. I just think that he's been having trouble with the styles of picks the Tiburones have been going, and make no mistake, the Tiburones have been trying to pick things that pair well up against that Giannis, so they're kind of playing into their hands by continuing to go with these selections, but they're saving Cope's pick until 10th every single time, and it seems like he is very adamant on trying to counterpick what Pagon's trying to do.
Well, now it's Kepri that joins up there. The right-hand side of the screen, Tiburones, those bans are the same, at least as far as we've been concerned this entire set. What should be next? Camazotz, I think, has always been their last one, and so that wouldn't be too surprising. The other side, Ardio does make her way right back into that ban column, but it does now come alongside a Kepri and a Morrigan. Geb, available, has been the first pick for the Artisans 2 games in a row, and it's not going to be. I saw a very short name on the screen and immediately was ready to assume, and all of a sudden it's Nike that gets picked up. Tiburones stripped this away from them, but Geb Uller still available.
Still available, and could be the option here for the Tiburones, especially with that Kepri taken off the board as the pick that really looked good against it. But this Terra is the one that has been kept out of Sybil's hands throughout this set. It's been a typical Terra ban there in that top 3 for the Sturdy Artisans, and this time they leave it open. They decide to go for it. Don't think they're going to go Terra Geb, as that would require a Terra solo, and it feels like that's really there for Sybil.
Yeah.
Very surprised to see it be Raijin in the spot, though. I mean, Pagon has been holding his pick until the bottom 2. We know that it has been the Morrigan pickup, the top 2 for Spreen so far in this set, but Uller's still open, trying to get something to keep that lane a little bit more even. I'd be shocked if there's anything but Uller Geb here for the Artisans.
And honestly, with the way that they played it earlier, you swap where Nike and Geb are, and that is the exact top 3 they had in game number 1. So, a good return to form for the Sturdy Artisans. Raijin is someone I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a whole lot of this set, although, like you said, stylized up against Giannis, maybe not necessarily Raijin, who you're thinking of. But Tiamat's still available and worth mentioning just because she's around. It's been so insane. Big Man Ting's literally won them a game the other day because he got a sick quadra kill on that pick. We'll see if that makes it through these bans, as Heimdall gets scooped up there for the last of the top 3 for the Tiburones, and immediately a Giannis ban comes through.
I mean, kind of surprised because this has been a pick that they have clearly game planned for. You know that there are going to be a couple bans towards these picks that have been good against it. I mean, you know that Loki's getting banned. There's no way that gets through. So you could assume Loki gets banned. You can assume it's probably Susano or Thanatos because they have banned Thanatos in the top 3. Got through this game. So I'd anticipate this to be Thanatos most likely. And then you can just go Bastet or Susano if those are options for you to try and counteract what this Giannis is trying to do. A little surprised to see the Tiburones ban it away, but it seems like the Artisans are looking to switch it up as well. That a Willish pick tells me that we might be seeing a more traditional mid or with a leap in the mid lane there for Pagon, just because obviously you can go to the Giannis, and they haven't been really worried about that a Willish whenever they have been going for something without a leap in mid.
Does admittedly, Ratatosk, Thanatos were some of the bans we saw earlier, leaves open some signature picks there still for Cope. And we'll have to wait and find out what's in the jungle. As King Arthur gets locked in, Tiamat will be the option for the mid laner, and you had mentioned it, but does technically have a leap.
Yep.
So is going to be thankful for the lack of an Wheelish. And Pele hovered, something that we've gotten to see a little bit more of and in kind of increasing amounts. And again, not necessarily a bad pick, just something that kind of jumps out at me. I feel like she's really solid, and yet I don't think of her as even in the top 5 for jungle.
Maybe not, but this is a signature pick for Sino. I mean, when he was playing on the Titans earlier on, this is one of the picks that he played. It doesn't surprise me to see him go for the Pele. This is an aggressive selection, allows him to take those 1v3, 1v4, 1v5 fights with maybe a little bit more success than what we've seen from him so far with the Chalk and then the Nemesis. And then no surprise to see Cope go back to the Thanatos. I mean, that's the pick that has been taken away from him. It's what he's played a lot of in this phase before all of the itemization buffs and before the assassin buffs to the jungle farm. Getting him on the Thanatos makes sense to me.
And we've seen some insane plays from it so far this year, and like you said, and we mentioned it at the very beginning, but feels like a lot of the items he wants to pick up just feel a lot better. We'll see if they're going to be able to make this Thanatos look just as good as expected in game number 3. Tiburones have started off, I think, game 1 with a lead, game 2 even. We'll see what they can manage here in game 3. Sturdy Artisans had a good turnaround, then got turned around on. We'll see what this is able to bring with them. I see Geb, I see Tiamat. Honestly, I see Uller, and I think, man, they are not fighting for the first 10 minutes if they can avoid it.
Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff there for the Artisans, for sure. They've got a lot of very strong picks. But the Tiburones, I mean, they've got some picks that their players are very comfortable on, and oftentimes that's more valuable than straight-up meta. Now, the problem is when meta and comfort level intersect, and like Yannick's case for the Geb, that's where it starts to get a bit spooky because that'll feel pretty strong for you. But I think the Tiburones certainly have a shot. Their team fight presence is going to be phenomenal between the Terra and the King Arthur and the Raijin. It's a different style for them. I mean, these last few games, it's been the Morrigan in mid. It's been these heavy burst assassins in the jungle. It hasn't been really team fight focused for them. How will they be able to change? Can they do that on the fly? You know, can they be ready to go for more team fight oriented styles and less pick oriented?
We'll have to see if they're able to make that transition that they need to. I was trying to look it up, and I'll find it eventually, but the combination of Ionic and Geb games has to be pretty massive over the years.
Oh yeah.
From what we have seen. I think there was a while, I can't remember if it was Ionic. I know a lot of players had Athena as their number 1 support because of the way back when, especially when Ionic was still playing, Athena being so prominent. But this Geb still being this devastating factor. Goes for the meditation this time. I think we've seen 3 different relic starts for Ionic in 3 different games. And I'm going to be a little honest with you. This one loses me a little bit. When maybe can cover that conversation in a second. Cope going to go with the blink, looking to lock down Ionic. To find the jump, but there's the rollout. Griff seems just fine. In fact, Ionic looks like he wants to turn this around, gets a good knockback onto Sybil. They don't have the follow-up damage necessary, but they thwart a otherwise great gank from the Tiburones.
And now it's Sino's turn to try and make a gank work. Heed very overextended, but keeping Sino guessing on his direction at the very least.
Well, they're going to get aggressive. Heat knocked up, Heat taken down. Sino shows off the Pele, throws out some taunts there as well, and he gets the first blood for the game.
That's a much easier percentage gank for the Sturdy Artisans, but really Cope, I think, should have been able to find this kill on this left-hand side. It was just a bit of missequencing.
Well, now the aggression once again coming through on the duo lane. Rinjaru's half health, but that tower seems like it's going to be more than, well, I say that, then you forget about the range Uller has. Griff only throttled by his mana bar, and that is going to be enough. And actually, noticeably, has started what looks like it will evolve into a Transcendence as opposed to the Jotun's Wrath we've seen the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a Jotun's Rush, and now Sino in trouble.
Jeez,
Scythe
jeez.
right there. Spreen slows him down for Cope, who's able to put the Tiburones on the board. Just good rotation. Pagon's on his own red. Doesn't get a chance to call out that rotation coming from Spreen. Easy kill there for the Tiburones.
And finally, well, I want to say it slows down a little bit. Purple buff invade from the Sturdy Artisans. And it does take a deep breath in. But that Thanatos, anytime I see him lurking in the jungle, is somebody that is necessary to worry about, especially this early on. Geb shields are nice, but not always the end-all be-all when you have something that's strong on the other side. Seems to be slowing things down just a little bit, although Cope now finding Pagon, just a little push up. There's going to be a good silence. Spreen has some mana. Ultimately, they're just going to fall a little bit behind here and feel just fine stabilizing.
Finally, I'm going to get a chance to talk about this meditation for Yannick
Oh, yeah.
on this Geb. I've been waiting for it. Actually, I don't know if I will be able to. No, Scythe does miss, but Sino has no blink for him, but I think Cope might be in range for this Volcanic Lightning.
Yeah, that's a good spot to be in if you're Sino and trying to find him. Cope is now taking an awkward path back through the jungle. There's no red buff there. Isolated, starts the backing animation, is
Whoa,
trying to get
what?
out of there. Rinjaru is going to be the one who's caught out instead. Between 3, Sino gets an easy knock-up, easy kill with the damage beside them. And that is going to be an easy pick on a Rinjaru, who I will be honest, don't know how he got there.
I don't think he realizes how he got there. He must have misplaced his portals and forgot which order he put them in and just got into a bad spot. So a very free kill for the Sturdy Artisan. So about this meditation, like I was ready to talk about, I think it's there in order to try and counteract not just the burst healing to try and get out of execute range. That's where we typically see meditation in the past, is trying to get out of these execute thresholds. But I think it's also really valuable to try and bring some of your own sustain up against the Terra, where normally she would just out-sustain you in these team fights so hard. But with the med, I mean, it's not going to match Earth and Fury, but it does a pretty good job when it comes to these team fights of keeping everyone topped up.
Well, is it going to be enough? Yeah, Cope gets into the air. Sino's been doing a great job. Keep everyone topped up is the end game here for Yannick. Did a lot with some great shields throughout game number 2, despite the loss. And so I expect Meditation to help do something very similar, keep everyone, well, alive is the idea. We'll see how often that's going to be able to go their way. Scorpion on right gets taken down by Sino. He's currently getting chased off by Heed. This King Arthur's also been something relatively thrown to the wayside, but after last week, especially with this kind of resurgence of Bluestone, not as surprising to see him come back alongside the starter item there.
Exactly. If Bluestone's good, Arthur's going to be okay at worst. And I think he's probably okay. I really don't think Arthur is going to be a premier solo laner in the meta right now, but could always be proven wrong. There are just so many great Arthur players in the SPL in particular, but also at this level of the SCC that, you know, if Haddix gets an excuse to lock it in, he's going to. It doesn't really matter how good the god is. If his itemization is okay, then he's probably going to see some degree of play.
We'll see, again, how much this is going to make the difference. I was anticipating a Gold Fury. My brain jumped about 3 minutes ahead. This Scorpion still needs to be taken down. Now I can start anticipating a Gold Fury. There we go. Got to get my head right back around the game. Tiamat minions starting to put some pressure here in mid. And that's the thing. I feel like this team scales very well into the late game for Sturdy Artisans. 2-1 for the kills. Not a necessarily massive lead, still trying to figure out a way to get it to the 2K mark. About 7 minutes in, but they've been able to get good farm, might even be able to find good chase, force Renjaro through the Bifrost. They're getting aggressive over here on the right-hand side, maybe too aggressive, as Ionic gets a great three-man Cataclysm. That's actually going to be the turnaround button. Relentless One jumps forward, Cope goes up into the air, and is hovering around looking for the stun, trying to figure it out. Execute will be good onto Relentless One, and they kill that off. Ionic locked between 3, and what was a great Cataclysm turns into 2 kills on the side of the Tiburones. Pagon might still get caught out here. Looks like that is going to be a safe Tiamat, but that's more than you can say for Sino, who's trying to turn it around. Not enough damage, and that is Spreen with the final hit to get the kill onto Sino.
Man, Sino sees 2 people on the enemy team, and he just sees red every single time. He just goes in with that Volcanic Lightning instead of using it as the escape tool. It really felt like if Sino was in that initial skirmish, that should have gone very well for the Artisans, because as you called, a great Cataclysm from Ionic, stops himself from getting stunned. Relentless One, literally zero hesitation on getting in there with that Blink Ultimate as well. And then that was kind of it. They were able to just turn and burn on this Nike.
That is always a good sign for him. Not a great sign here for Griff. Yeah, one more hit. That's all you need sometimes. And they're going to be able to clean that up. Ionic a little slow to the roll. The Tiburones have taken this Thanatos pick and really started to push it to the limit.
It's been easy for Cope if he can just dictate his engagement this way. I mean, he's able to blink in, chase down Griff. Good bait from Renjaro, who even though he doesn't have beads, knows that he can afford to eat an axe combo from his positioning and his HP bar, and baits in Griff nicely. Cope with a well-timed blink, just barrel stuffs that scythe. No way to miss it whenever you were able to follow the jump that well.
Good pickup once again for them. Cope 3-0-2, showing us exactly why this is one that was banned very early on. We'll see if it can keep up this pace, though. Thanatos is one that you have to pivot your style with as the game goes on. We'll see. Well, actually, I've seen it several times. I can tell you, Cope does know how to do that very well. But it'll be another tale to watch how it ends up playing a role in this game. Relentless One uses the Sentinel of Zeus, taken up to the sky by Heed. That should be the go button, but Cope mysteriously backing away a little bit, trying to cover the option, and just keeping them isolated. Relentless One doesn't have much to do or say here. A couple of knockbacks, the health bar getting low. There's a tier 1 tower. Oh, minion wave and the blink might actually be enough to get away. Turns around there, and that might have been the problem. Cope gets another kill, tacks it up 4-0-2.
Yeah, really well played by Relentless One, but just too many options covered there by Cope. Doesn't overplay his hand, doesn't get too low in order to keep the chase going, lets Heed do the vast majority of the dirty work for him, and then is able to just use Scent of Death to catch up. That was well played.
Now they're in a, well, what feels like fun spot. Red buff invade. Gold Fury is right there. If one team gets an overwhelming victory, that is the prize, the trophy, waiting for them. But nobody's going to bite. Nobody's going to fight, except for Sino, who really wants to, but doesn't seem like he's going to be able to get too much out of here. They're going to fall back on the side of the Sturdy Artisans, and now we're starting to see a little bit of a change-up. We've seen a lot of Jotun's Wrath, still the way that Relentless One goes. We had talked about the Meditation earlier. The Transcendence now almost fully stacked there for Griff, and that's going to be another big power jump for him, as well as finishing up some of these other items to really start being a part of these fights.
Sino uses that Volcanic Lightning, but Sybil still had the second part of that dash available, so he is A-okay for now.
Yeah. Cataclysm used on Sybil, and you know what? It gets a kill, and that's all they need. They can just isolate one, and they do exactly that. Maybe a little bit of overkill, but either way, the Sturdy Artisans are happy with it, and they're still staying aggressive. I'm watching that Gold Fury. Looks like Griff wants to start it. Now there's the rest of the team to come join him, trying to, and what looks like should be successfully, able to strip away this objective, and ultimately taking this gold lead that the Tiburones have slowly accrued, strimmed it back down to nothing.
In a good position off one pick on the Sybil. I mean, just not enough presence there from Spreen, who has to back Renjaro back at the exact same time. Just some desynced back timers from the Tiburones, or should I say two synced up back timers from both the damage dealers make that a very easy Gold Fury secure for the Sturdy Artisans. And the real difference is really just in this jungle. I mean, it's a 2-level lead for Cope. It's sitting at that 4-0-2, but a part of all 6 kills so far for the Tiburones. If the Sturdy Artisans can keep taking fights that Cope is not involved in, they should be pretty favored to win them.
Just keep Cope out. Seems, well, it's very forward, very difficult to accomplish. but we'll see if they can keep it up, as it's been working out for them so well. hi-rez finished early on for Cope. I was curious as to what this build was going to look like. The Jotun's definitely an easy rush, something that you almost always go. No, always go on Thanatos at the very beginning. Of course, the hi-rez fits in just fine. That's where Cope comes in right now, just lurking in the background as he takes a little bit of poke. Pyromancer's up, FG is up. You can see the sturdy artisans hovering on the right-hand side of the map, just looking for something. It's going to be Sybil instead who goes in. The Terra ult's on 3. They're able to get a little aggressive. Pagon takes a lot of damage in the process, but Cope is the one who gets isolated. Goes up to the sky, manages to get out of here. That hovering death saves them from death, and Cope disengages.
Yeah, Sybil's engaged there, just a little bit ambitious. I mean, Cope is in a good position to blink onto Pagon, but there's just not enough damage from him quite yet. I think that Sybil was just a little bit too far forward there as well, made it very easy, and then Ionic did a really good job, kind of blinks in aggressively past Sybil in order to make sure that Spreen doesn't do any damage to anybody else and keeps him at bay. So really good defense via offense there for Ionic. Let's take a look at Sino's build, by the way. I was surprised he didn't kill Cope in that moment. I think it's because someone won the argument on, hey, we need brawlers from you in this game. Like, we need it. There's a Terra and a Thanatos on the other side. Like, please, God, build anti-heal. And so instead of finishing off this serrated edge, if this turns out to be a Crusher, I'm going to lose my mind.
He already has a Crusher. That's fine.
Okay, if this turns out to be Jotuns, I'm going to lose my mind. It has got to be brawlers here. It has to be.
It's heavily anticipated. I was actually just going to ask you about that, just because it's not typical, at least in Smite, for us to see 2 tier 2s picked up, and it is Brawler's beat stick, so you don't have to lose your mind. You can wipe the sweat off your brow and not worry too much about it. Gets a blink as well, the level 2 back, so he's going to be able to get engaging on these fights. And like you said, anti-heal is now a little more prevalent for them. They are looking to potentially get a Pestilence there for a Relentless one. They've got the Divine Ruin. Yet to see if it's enough for Ionic to get a Cursed Ankh for his second relic. We'll have to wait until Ionic hits level 12 for that one. As things have taken a little bit of a lull here, 14 minutes in? I say that immediately. They start a Pyromancer up, and Cope happens to be around here. It's low enough that if you don't leash it too long, you might be able to steal that away, but it's going to be the engage. Sybil looking to get aggressive alongside Heed. Heed looking for the stun just wide on Sino. Sino going to barely be able to dodge it out. The beads helping out on that one. The stun not connecting for Cope, and now Cope maybe a little deeper than they anticipated. It's a chase down. Pagon still in trouble, so is Sino, as Heed gets a little too close for comfort here. The King Arthur takes him up into the air and is going to be able to find 1 kill right there. Tier 2 dive is not in the forecast for him, and Heed is just trying to get away. Good death scythe from Cope helps make sure they peel away. It's a 2-for-1 as Relentless One finally comes crashing down. Ranjaru gets credit for that kill.
Man, Sino just gets caught, ends up in an awkward position, and a good engagement there. Is now Griff in trouble, but a good knockup.
Oh my God!
See ya, Cope. That Geb Uller combo continues to work well for the Artisans.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you hit your axe. If you have knockups like that, it does not matter what is around you. That CC is good enough. Now Griff getting aggressive has turned it around, has enough health that they're not too worried about it. Did finish off a Jotun's Wrath. While they don't have beads, doesn't seem to be slowing them down anytime soon. Sino's here. It's going to be a little bit of aggression, but good fight from Sturdy Artisans. Maybe a little bit of a better fight from the Tiburones. As ultimately, it still reads 8-4 in favor of the Chaos team. No big objectives for them to scoop up afterward. That Pyromancer's still sitting on the map.
Tell you what, I think the biggest surprise so far is how uncomfortable Pagon has looked on this Tiamat. I mean, I know this is a pick he's very good on. He's played it a lot in the SCC this phase, if memory serves. And he just has not looked particularly comfortable. Did very little in that last team fight and made it pretty easy for the Tiburones to just run through it. I mean, Heed had a lot of impact in that fight, was really unanswerable on that Arthur. Cope obviously did good work until he got one-tapped by Griff and Ionic. I think that in these fights moving forward, we got to see a little bit more from Pagon in particular.
Yeah, it's been a quiet game for the Tiamat. Just 1-1-0. It hasn't been as effective as maybe we're used to. Red buff around both the belt Pagon and Griff could give him a distinct advantage in any kind of skirmishes. A little bit of extra damage never hurts. Primal Fury spawned up on the left-hand side of the map. Cope getting aggressive onto the Scorpion right here. Sino just a tad too late to be able to catch him out while he's doing it. Not too late to get the damage out, but ends up committing the ult for ult trade. Cope will be able to walk away with their life and the Scorpion to boot. That's going to be aggression from the Sturdy Artisans, at least all stacking up in mid, but nowhere to really run with all that energy.
Not really. I mean, Sino now has no blink or ultimate, whereas Cope's blink is coming back up. This shouldn't be a free and easy Primal Fury here for the Artisans.
Well, they're starting up nonetheless. Sybil zoned out. Heed, Spreen, Renjaru coming around the corner and looking to loop into the back line. Going to be Cope. No ults for them. Sturdy Artisans get the Fury. Now it's the engage. Heed a little bit too late. Sybil as well. Jump in and they get into the fray and they're looking for the damage, but Sybil's the one who's taking a little bit too much than they anticipated. Pagon jumps in and gets their hands dirty this time around. Sybil goes away and Heed is continuing the chase, trying to put pressure onto Griff, trying to put pressure onto
Nice
everybody.
knockup.
Pagon's low, but great knockups. Pagon, credit for another one. Looking for one more. Might as well make it 3 as they find the kill onto Heed. Spreen barely able to get out with their life, and Cope isolated and alone, maybe taking the wrong path because you're following right to the mid laner, and Pagon was waiting. The damage is there, and he makes it 4. Now the Raijin being across the map, it's the only thing that saves the Decisive and stops the Penta.
Okay, so I asked for a little bit more, but I didn't need that much.
He cracks his knuckles, pops his neck.
You know when you ask for like more sauce at Taco Bell and they like, it's almost an offense to ask, and so they dump like 40 sauces into your bag, and like, I didn't need that much. Like, I didn't need a quadra kill from Pagon in that fight. Maybe a little bit more, but that time he's in perfect position, uses his CC really well, peels for Griff, and makes sure that he doesn't just get to do whatever he wanted in that fight.
Well, now Sino maybe caught out a little too far, forced to use the ult to disengage. Hey, ult for ult. You're going to get away with your life, and the Taiko drums are used on the other side, so Spreen doesn't have that utility or that damage available. Also, if you watch yesterday's patch notes, they're going to get hit with a nerf in the next update. So something to
Hefty
look
one.
forward to if you're tired of seeing Raijin. I think a lot of people are. I think he's 1 game away. I have it right in front of me. I don't know why I need to double check. I'm pretty sure he's 1 game away from joining Osiris and Gilgamesh for 100 games so far in the SBL this year.
Those are the only 3 with 100 games?
Yeah, Raijin's at 99, Fafnir's 95, and then Cucullin at 84, Heimdall 83, King Arthur 82, and then it jumps down to 70s and so on and so forth.
Interesting. Yeah, Raijin's been a big part of the meta so far this year for sure. And look, I think that is a pretty hefty ult nerf. I wonder if it'll be enough.
We'll have to figure that out. I guess when that comes around, Griff might need something sooner than that, though. Look at the damage numbers he's putting out right now. Good kill onto Cope to instantly engage on this one. If that axe connects, then it maybe is a lot easier here, but it doesn't matter. They still got the CC from Pagon, who gets themselves a kill onto Sybil. Now Heed left between all of them. Relentless One's incredibly low, and Relentless One is going to go down. Spreen gets credit for that kill and peels for themselves, making Pagon fall back just slightly. We'll get the Thunder Crash out of there, but it's not enough to save Heed forever. Pagon's so low, but the Geb Shield is there to at least peel away. While the Tiburones walk away with their lives, you get 4 members still standing on the Sturdy Artisans. And they're posed to find someone in the jungle. I thought they would have gone for a Pyromancer, but they want to kill.
Well, Sino still has ultimate, so you know his trigger finger is itching right now to fire that one off. But Renjaru a little bit too smart to walk into the jungle without a whole lot of vision right there at the entrance. But the Tiburones did enough. I mean, Griff nearly died. Pagon nearly died. Those almosts do matter enough, especially with the build with what it is for ADCs right now without a whole lot of lifesteal in it. And by I mean a whole lot of, I mean literal 0 in their build. Uller only relying on that axe form in order to get his lifesteal. You put him down to sub 100, he's not going to be able to lifesteal enough off the FG to not die to it. So you do enough there to at least make sure the Sturdy Artisans can't take the big objective.
An unfortunate day when you can't slot the Aussie in just somewhere. When the lifesaver for a lot of these hunters. So Griff, like you said, going to be feeling that one 8 ways to Sunday. That's right now. It's 2-1-7 for the Uller. Level 19, 2-level lead over his hunter opponent. 3 levels there for the supports. Ionic went down. I think there was a lead earlier for the Tiburones, but now has been able to get to 14. Still waiting for 12 on Sybil. So they don't even have access to that second relic yet. 21 minutes into the game, and Heed is going to get isolated, forced to use some CC immunity. The beads there burned thanks to Griff's axe, and now Griff is looking for the damage. He's damaging Sybil. He's bringing down Heed. They're locking him up and finding him easy to knock down. Sino able to peel off Cope Baby as well, save his backliners, and then just turn the onslaught around, continuing that aggression. Another kill onto Sybil, Heed, Cope, all down. Spreen and Renjaru just trying to stay alive at this point, but they're going to do their best to defend this tier 2. They will be able to thwart it, although I don't think the Sturdy Artisans want it. They have something bigger in mind.
Just too far forward there from the Tiburones front line, and that kind of baits Cope into a bad position. Can you tell who the Artisans are most worried about in these team fights? Because I don't think it's either Spreen or Renjaru. I think they are just laser focused on making sure that Cope doesn't beat them.
Yeah, Cope was 4-0-2 earlier, is now 4-4-2, has only died since then. No assists, no kills. And that is just another kill for Pagon. Unstoppable, you heard it right, 8-1-2. We had talked about wanting to see more from Pagon when they were 1-1-0, and they have done nothing but deliver.
Oh, Ionic.
Ionic's going to die there. An unfortunate fall, which admittedly thwarts a fire giant, but that's going to be a small bump in the road, it feels like, for the Sturdy Artisans.
Caught shopping there for Ionic. Definitely had the item store open. Good stop from Renjaru and using the vision from the Heimdall one so he knows where they are. Renjaru finally getting some relevant damage off in these team fights. He was below Sybil and Ionic for the vast majority of this game. Think maybe even going into that fight, but had a pretty good one and was able to force Ionic back. Probably shouldn't have gotten the kill overall, but ends up getting it, so you got to give him credit where it's due. And now you're looking for the Tiburones to just try and facilitate their backline a little bit more. Spreen and Renjaru, if they aren't the ones getting hit by Sino's ultimate, they've got to make the Artisans pay for that. They have to really punish the lack of dive from the Artisans, because right now the Artisans are just really content to kill this Terra, kill this Arthur, kill this Thanatos, and then we'll see what we do after that. You know, you really got to punish them for that.
When they pick up the Sunder here, that's I was waiting for that level 12 to finally occur for Sybil. Is that going to be enough to stop this? I mean, Relentless One's kind of been leading the forefront for this, and that's typically where we see that counter come through for the Sunder. But it doesn't feel like Relentless One has been the problem, just a problem.
Yeah, it's good against Ionic as well, though. I mean, Sunder just kind of blanket good at killing people. It just happens to be a little bit better at killing the tanky targets, and those with shields. So don't forget that it doesn't just break this Nike shield, but it'll help break the Geb shield
shields
as well.
Yeah.
So in that instance, I think the Sunder's probably the right pickup.
Well, hey, we'll get to see if it finds any action in a lot of this. Sybil's been part of the action, but if that Sunder is going to get used and usefully is the biggest question here. 4-4 for the support, only trailing, still now 2 levels down. Not as bad as the 3 that it was earlier, kind of slowly but surely catching up to where Ionic is. We're getting 24 minutes, a good aggressive positioning. Sino's looking to push a wave on left into this tier 2 tower. That will, once he shows up, if they choose to get aggressive, will show up on the map. And that might be the go button for the Tiburones, but seems like patience is key. Sino's going to show up over here, but nobody's in a really good position to get aggressive. The tier 2 tower goes down, and you get nothing but net benefit for Sturdy Artisans.
Easy little shade over to that left-hand side. I like the play from Sino to stand there and hope that someone was coming to clear the Oni wave, because he's got the 100-0 potential now that he's finished off that Erendite. So I liked the idea there from him, but at the very least, you get that tier 2, you open up a Phoenix for your offense, and you get enough gold for your team to finish off some key items, including a couple of starter upgrades for not only Sino, but for Relentless One as well.
That's where map state comes into the equation. You mentioned not just an exposed Phoenix, but only 2 tier 2 towers left standing for Tiburones, one in mid, one in right. Whereas on the other side, there are 5 towers standing. The only thing that has fallen for the Sturdy Artisans is that solo lane tier 1 tower, which we learned on Waiting Room last week is the typically first one to fall. No, second one to fall. Chaos side, I think, is the one that falls first. I can't remember. It's one of the two. It's solo lane. They're the ones who end up losing their towers. Either way, that's the one that matters the most. Renjaru is the one who loses their life first. Sino trades it 1 for 1. They do get the kill onto the Hunter. Spreen shortly falls right thereafter. Now Cope is getting chased down. Pagon still has the damage. It's just a matter of finding it. The knockup isn't going to be there. The damage isn't good enough, but they're going right into the waiting arms of Relentless One somewhere else on the map. You get a good kill from Griff onto Heed, and now it is a 1v4 trying to slow down the roll of the Sturdy Artisans. Immediately rushing over to mid, where they have a minion wave to knock down this tier 2, potentially go for the Phoenix, and they have just enough time. They might even be able to squeak out the end.
Yeah, I think they might be getting I don't think they can end, but it could be close. I think Renjaru was 15 seconds left, 20 on Spreen.
Yeah, it's taking a little too long.
I think it takes them a bit too long, but maybe not.
They're going to get aggressive. They've got minions, Tiamat, and normal otherwise. The Titan's already going to be at 2/3 HP, and they're looking to burn down Sybil alongside it. That's going to be the kill. That's going to give them the deicide. The Titan's going down. Renjaru respawns. Renjaru doesn't even walk out of the fountain in time. That's going to be a kill and a win for the Sturdy Artisans, taking it 2-1. They just needed the small window, and they found it.
Okay, so Pagan on the Giannis, they were consistently picking things to bully him. They were really worried about that pick. They ban it away, and they forget Tiamat.
Yep.
And then Pagan kind of goes 10-1-4, Quadra kills you. Maybe we should let him have the Giannis instead of the Tiamat.
And again, you had said want to see a little more out of Pagan at 1-1-0. Ends at 10-1-4. What is that? That's a 9-0-4 swing. That is a pretty good slash line for the Tiamat. Seems to be the case. Maybe a theme running out throughout today. We'll have to see if we see any more of those. But before that, we're going to break down game number 3 right after this.
like the world is on our side. Nothing can bring me down tonight. And ooh, baby, when we're together, you and I, your touch sends chills down my spine. Alright, hey, I got a brand new love you. Take me away, girl.
Gotta take off my jacket for this one.
Dude, no, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy.
That's right, go to youtube.com/SmitePro. Of course, we talked about Smite VOD a little bit earlier. That's where you can catch all the videos on demand, watch the games that you missed. Smite Pro is where you're going to be able to catch all of this fun stuff when we do the media days and in the event that you miss anything, whether it's trivia with the pros, some of the team check-ins, the 1v1s that we host on there. Those will all get thrown onto Smite Pro, as well as roster apocalypse videos and Agro's opinions, anything like that we use for content, sometimes live, sometimes just straight to YouTube. Make sure you go to youtube.com/SmitePro and make sure you subscribe to make sure you get all that good content. If I say make sure one more time, I think I explode. So I'm going to
make sure you don't say it anymore.
It's one of those, when you say it like 3 times, your brain goes, all right, man.
Yeah.
Chill.
Stop.
But also now you're thinking about it, so you're going to say it again. Have fun. Either way, we get a nice 2-1 victory there from Sturdy Artisans. First game kind of starts a little rough for them. They turn it around. Game 2, an unfortunate drop. But Game 3, they kind of had the control pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah, they were playing much better in Game 3. I mean, I think that letting Ionic play his signature Geb in all 3 games is always going to make this a pretty difficult task for you to win. He played really well, but of course the story is going to be Pagon. The man gets a quadra kill, double digits in the kill department. Cope got off to a really good start in this game, but look at the focus. I mean, Cope lands the back line, and all 3 heads immediately turn to him. Like, he is priority target number 1 at all times, and that focus really lended itself to a victory here for the Sturdy Artisans.
And it's just, I mean, again, an insane turnaround, not just the 12.0 KDA, but when we were really lacking presence from Pagon was 1-1-0, ends the game 10-1-4, so has a 9-0-4 swing in terms of fights. 13 kills affected without going down. Of course, you had mentioned it, but getting the quadra kill that could have been a Penta. Spreen did a good amount of hightailing to get out of there to make sure that the Raijin didn't fall down, but you can see he was at half health. Would have been another easy kill to pick up had they found him just fast enough. But still, quadra kills and Tiamat right now over the last 2 weeks seem to just go hand in hand in terms of winning you games. And the Sturdy Artisans look great in the process. Also should throw out Griff 3-1-12. Affects a lot of kills. Same thing for Relentless One.
Yeah, I mean, the front line played well for the Artisans. Relentless One and Ionic in particular, I think, did a really good job in this game. That big play that sets up the quadra kill really gets going because of that double knockup from this Nike for Relentless One. So that top pick ends up paying off for them. I think that the Sturdy Artisans, I mean, this was a must-win with only, 1 week to go in the SCC. So this was a very important win for them to try and get back into the top 2. Now they need some help from these other teams in order to take down the Herculean Hoofs.
And a very, very big win for them, as you had highlighted. This is something that if the Tiburones had win, we'd be looking at some ties and things that maybe would be a little more interesting. But as of right now, it's going to be on the top end of the bracket, or on the standings, that make a big difference. And of course, to look at those, you have to look at the schedule and see where these matchups are going to be falling. We just watched the Sturdy Artisans. Up next is going to be Sleekness taking on Winter Dogs, an important one for that top matchup. Sleekness is a team to keep your eyes on because they got a 2-0 the other week against teams that you really wouldn't anticipate them being able to do so. Herculean Hoofs will be playing the Average Joes there on Saturday, and of course Friday and Sunday we'll be jumping back into Europe. But for now, on Thursday, we are going to be staying in North America.
Exactly, and this is a big game for Sleekness more so than the Winter Dogs. The Winter Dogs should be basically clinched for top 2. One more victory should do it for them, mathematically guaranteed, but I refuse to do math beyond that. So I'm going to say they win it, they're good. The Sleekness need to find this win in order to try and keep pace with the Sturdy Artisans and the Herculean Hoofs, assuming the Hoofs will drop to the Average Joes, but that's not exactly a safe assumption because the Joes are 1-7 during this phase. So the Hoofs likely to improve to 6-3. You can't afford to fall to 4-5 with 1 week to go if you want to have a shot.
And remember, all these standings matter if you were paying attention over the weekend, or even if you weren't, you can go to SmiteProLeague.com. The most recent thing on the news, on the blog, was the path to Worlds for a lot of these teams. We know it for the SBL teams. We're looking at group stages and playoffs for Phase 3. When you're looking here in the SCC, you are looking at these Phase 2 standings and, of course, the playoffs that are going to be coming afterwards. So every single bit, every win matters for them right now. We'll see what happens up next in North America, but for now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.